Imagine this, you're lying in bed, but it doesn't feel like rest. The world is moving, but you are not. People are laughing outside, and it only reminds you of what you've forgotten, what it feels like to be truly alive. You wake up with no excitement, no pull toward the day, and you ask yourself the question you're too afraid to say out loud. What's the point of all this? When life feels meaningless, when everything feels like dust in your hands, that is not the end. That is the beginning of awakening. The Buddha once said, "Just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life." And in those moments of deep sadness, you are not falling apart. You are being called back to something deeper than pleasure or distraction. You are being asked to remember. So today, let me share with you powerful Buddhist lessons for when you are sad and life feels like it no longer has a reason. Listen closely, because your soul is ready to hear this. 1. Pain is not the end, it is the invitation. When you're in pain, it's easy to think something has gone terribly wrong. You might feel like you've failed, like life is punishing you, or like you've somehow fallen off the path you were meant to be on. Sadness, heartbreak, emptiness, these emotions are often seen as problems that need to be fixed immediately. People around you might say things like, "Cheer up, move on," or "Don't dwell on it," as if your feelings are stains that must be scrubbed away. But in the Buddhist understanding of suffering, pain is not a mistake. It's not a sign that you are broken or weak. Pain is a messenger. Pain is a signal that something deep within you needs your attention. It's the gentle hand of life tapping on your shoulder, asking you to pause, not to panic, but to pay attention. Pain has a way of breaking through the illusions we build around ourselves. The illusion that life should always feel good, that things will stay the same forever, that we can control everything. In reality, nothing lasts. Everything changes. That is the essence of impermanence, one of the core truths of Buddhism. When your world begins to crack, through loss, disappointment, failure, or grief, it's not the end of your story. It's the moment your true story begins. Because it is often in the space where something ends that something more real can begin. That deep ache you feel in your chest, that heaviness in your body that makes it hard to move or even breathe, these are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you are being opened. And yes, it hurts to be opened. But just like a lotus flower can only rise through thick mud, your growth must often begin in discomfort. The mud is not separate from the lotus. It's part of what makes its blooming possible. Pain isn't here to destroy you. It's here to soften what has become too rigid in you. It's here to strip away the layers of false strength, false hope, and false identity, so that you can return to the simple, powerful truth of who you are beneath it all. Pain doesn't demand that you collapse or give up. It asks you to stop running, to stop distracting yourself, to sit down right in the middle of it and begin to listen. It asks you to slow your breath, open your heart, and gently explore the stories you've been telling yourself. Maybe you believed that your worth depended on other people's approval. Maybe you thought that success would fill the emptiness inside you. Maybe you've been carrying the weight of old guilt, shame, or regret that was never yours to hold in the first place. Pain is not here to punish you. It's here to reveal these things, to help you see what you've outgrown. When pain arrives at your door, it doesn't come empty-handed. It brings a mirror. Not the kind of mirror that reflects your outer appearance, but one that shows you your inner landscape, the parts of you you've hidden, denied, or neglected. And when you dare to look into that mirror, not with judgment but with compassion, something begins to shift. You begin to understand that the pain itself is not the enemy. The real struggle is in the resistance, the belief that you shouldn't feel this way, that you should be stronger, happier, more put together. But once you stop resisting, once you allow the pain to speak, it will begin to show you what it came to teach. And from that point forward, healing doesn't require you to change everything outside of you. It simply requires you to see more clearly, to recognize that what you're going through is not an interruption to your journey. It is the journey. Healing begins not with a sudden fix, but with a quiet understanding, a shift in awareness, a softening of the heart. And as you walk through your pain, not around it, you'll find that you don't emerge weaker. You emerge wiser, more grounded, more awake. Because pain, when met with presence, doesn't just scar you. It sculpts you into something stronger, gentler, and far more real than you were before. 2. Emptiness is not meaningless. It is spacious. There may come a time in your life when everything feels hollow, when the people, the passions, the routines that once filled your heart now feel distant, dull, or even pointless. You wake up in the morning not because you're excited to live, but because you're supposed to. The things that once brought you joy now seem like shadows of a past you can't access anymore. Your heart feels flat, your mind feels foggy, and your spirit, it feels silent, too silent. In this space, you might begin to fear that you've lost something essential, that the light in you has gone out, that you are somehow broken beyond repair. But what if this emptiness is not proof that something is wrong with you? What if this emptiness is exactly where your next truth will be born? Buddhism teaches that emptiness is not a curse. It is not a sign of failure or spiritual defeat. It is a natural part of awakening. In fact, in Buddhist philosophy, the concept of shunyata, or emptiness, is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood, respected, and even embraced. But this emptiness is often misunderstood. It is not a black hole of despair. It is not a void that swallows life whole. It is the open sky after the storm has passed. It is the clearing in the forest after the fire has ended. Emptiness is what remains when everything false has burned away, when everything unnecessary has fallen from your hands. It is the space between what you thought you needed and what your soul actually longs for. You see, most of our lives are built on layers of identity, expectation, noise, and habit. We identify ourselves by what we do, who we love, what we own, and how others see us. We cling to roles, the achiever, the helper, the strong one, the dreamer. We hold on to dreams that were given to us by society, by family, by our past selves who didn't yet know any better. And all of that can work, for a time, until life, in its quiet wisdom, begins to loosen your grip on these things, until the roles no longer fit, the dreams no longer satisfy, the achievements no longer silence the question growing louder inside you, is this all there is? And when that question finally echoes through your chest, it can feel terrifying, because everything you thought you were starts to feel like it's slipping through your fingers. That's the moment when many people panic. They try to run back to what used to make them feel whole. They try to distract themselves, fill the space with noise, jump into new relationships, chase new goals, anything to avoid the stillness that now surrounds them. But that stillness is not your enemy, it's your return. Emptiness is not a sign that life is meaningless. It's a sign that the meanings you used to rely on are no longer enough for the depth your soul is craving. This is the moment when your consciousness is inviting you to evolve. It is the death of your old self, not in a dramatic or frightening way, but in the most natural way possible, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn, making space for new life in spring. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding yourself. The version of you that needed validation, needed distraction, needed noise to feel real, it is dissolving. What remains is the beginning of your truth. In the space of emptiness, you begin to realize that peace is not the absence of problems, but the absence of illusion. You begin to see that you were never the roles you played. You were never the things you lost. You were never the praise you received or the criticism you feared. You were always something deeper, something quieter, something spacious. This is why the Buddha taught not to cling, because all that you cling to will eventually dissolve. And the more you resist that process, the more you suffer. But when you allow yourself to open to emptiness without panic, you begin to taste a freedom that is unlike anything the world can offer. It is here, in this wide open space, that you begin to sense who you really are, not as an idea, but as presence itself. You begin to experience life, not as something happening to you, but as something unfolding through you, without needing labels, without needing to constantly chase a goal, without needing to prove yourself. You simply exist. And in that raw, simple existence, you begin to feel again, not the loud highs of surface pleasure, but the quiet joy of being, of breathing, of knowing that nothing is missing in this very moment. So if you feel empty, don't rush to fill it. Don't cover it up with noise. Don't run from the silence. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it be your teacher, because in that still, hollow space, something new is being formed. A deeper clarity, a quieter love, a stronger peace. And you don't need to do anything to earn it. You only need to stop fighting the emptiness and start recognizing its beauty. Because the truth is, emptiness is not the absence of meaning. It is the space in which meaning can finally breathe. 3. Your soul does not need to perform to be worthy. In a world driven by doing, by goals, by comparison, and constant measurement, it is easy, so heartbreakingly easy, to believe that your worth is something you must earn, that your value as a human being is tied to your productivity, that your significance depends on how useful, how successful, how perfect you appear in the eyes of others. From a young age, we're taught that we must achieve to be accepted, that we must win to be celebrated, that we must impress to be loved. Slowly, without even realizing it, we begin to build an identity around what we can produce. Our schedules become packed, our hearts become pressured, and our joy becomes conditional, based on performance, recognition, and approval. But the moment life slows down or forces us to stop, we begin to feel a creeping sense of panic. Who am I if I'm not achieving? Who am I if I'm not constantly busy, constantly performing, constantly doing something that proves my value? This question can feel unsettling, even frightening. Because if we've built our entire sense of self around performance, then stillness begins to feel like worthlessness. But this is where the illusion begins to break. This is where Buddhist wisdom gently steps in and reminds us that being has always mattered more than doing. That presence is more powerful than performance. That your soul was never meant to be a machine. In Buddhist practice, especially in the teachings around mindfulness and non-attachment, there is a deep emphasis on the sacredness of simply existing. The breath is not productive, yet it is sacred. The sky does not achieve anything, yet it holds the sun and the stars without effort. Trees do not hurry to bloom, rivers do not rush to reach the ocean, and the moon does not ask for applause when it lights up the night. They simply are, and in their being, there is peace. There is beauty. There is truth. The same is true of you. You do not need to do more to be enough. You do not need to fix yourself to be lovable. You do not need to achieve to be allowed to rest. Often when we feel sadness or meaninglessness, it is not because life has no meaning. It is because we have become disconnected from the truth that our being in and of itself is enough. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to take a breath without earning it. You are allowed to be quiet, to be still, to do nothing, and still be deeply worthy of love and belonging. Buddhism teaches us to observe the mind's craving for identity, for success, for validation. And in that awareness, we begin to release our attachment to those things. We begin to see how our ego creates suffering by constantly chasing value outside of ourselves, forgetting that value was never outside to begin with. Think about the times you've sat beside someone you love and said nothing, but still felt completely understood. Think about the moments when your presence alone made someone feel safe, even when you had no answers to offer. Were you doing something impressive in that moment? Number. You were simply being yourself, open, gentle, human. That is enough. That has always been enough. And yet, we forget. We forget, and we begin to believe the lie that we must constantly hustle to earn our place in this world. But the deeper truth, the one your soul has always known, is that your worth is not conditional. It is not earned through a list of accomplishments. It is not determined by how many people like you, follow you, or admire you. Your worth is intrinsic. It is the light that was in you the moment you were born, and it will remain in you no matter how dark your life may feel. You don't lose your value when you're tired. You don't become less sacred when you're confused, grieving, or still trying to figure things out. In fact, it is often in those moments, those quiet, raw, unpolished moments, that your truest self begins to shine. This is why Buddhist monks spend years in silence, in meditation, in the simplest of lives, because they understand that what matters most is not how loud your life looks, but how deeply your life feels. They let go of the performance. They release the need to prove. And in doing so, they rediscover what modern life tries to make us forget, that stillness is not failure, that simplicity is not insignificance, that slowness is not shameful. You do not have to live like a monk to embrace this truth. You only need to be willing to see yourself through different eyes, eyes that are not clouded by expectation, eyes that do not measure your worth by your usefulness. So the next time you feel low, like you haven't done enough, like you're not successful enough, like you're falling behind, pause, take a breath, step away from the noise. You are not behind, you are not failing, you are simply being asked to return. Return to yourself, return to the sacred silence within you, return to the truth that your soul never needed to perform to be whole. Even when you are not producing, not striving, not winning in the eyes of the world, you are still made of light, still worthy, still enough. The lotus doesn't bloom faster because it's being watched. It blooms when it's ready. So will you. 4. Darkness is not the absence of light. It is its teacher. There will be nights in your life, quiet, heavy nights when you feel like the world has forgotten how to shine. The sun may still rise, but it no longer warms you. The stars still appear, but they feel distant, like unreachable memories. The laughter of others rings in your ears, not as music, but as reminders of your own silence. In these moments, it is easy to believe that something essential has vanished from your life, that your inner light has gone out, that joy has abandoned you, that meaning has evaporated, that hope is a flame too faint to guide you anymore. But what if I told you that this darkness you feel is not your enemy, but your teacher? Buddhism does not shy away from darkness. It does not label it as evil, nor treat it as something to be feared or denied. Instead, it recognizes darkness as a natural phase of the human journey, an essential part of the cycle of growth. Just as the seasons must change, just as night must follow day, your inner landscape too must shift. Darkness, in this view, is not the opposite of light. It is what prepares you to truly see it. For how can you appreciate warmth if you've never felt cold? How can you recognize peace if you've never known restlessness? How can you see the stars unless you are first willing to sit under the night sky? In the teachings of the Buddha, suffering is not something to escape. It is something to understand. He taught that life is suffering not as a pessimistic truth, but as an invitation to awaken. When you feel lost, hollow, or weighed down by sadness, you are not being punished. You are being softened. You are being brought back to yourself in the most honest way possible. In the darkness, all the noise fades. The masks fall away. The distractions no longer work. And for the first time, perhaps in years, you're left alone with your own raw, untouched self. the self that exists beneath the roles, beneath the smiles, beneath the performance. This moment, though it hurts, is sacred. Darkness has a strange gift. It reveals what you've avoided. It strips away illusions and leaves you with only what is real. And yes, that can be terrifying, because what is real is often vulnerable, unpolished, and uncertain. But it is also beautiful. It is also pure. In the dark, you may begin to see that the things you once relied on for happiness were never solid. The job, the relationship, the praise, the achievements, they flicker like shadows, temporary, unsure, and once those things fall away, you are left with the one thing that never leaves: your own awareness, your breath, your presence, the part of you that has watched it all, endured it all, and remained. Have you ever noticed how your eyes adjust to the dark if you stay long enough? At first, everything is black. You can't see a thing, but slowly, gently, without forcing anything, shapes begin to emerge. The outlines of the room become clear. The world doesn't become light again, but you begin to see within the darkness. You begin to realize that light is not always loud. Sometimes it is soft. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it doesn't remove the darkness. It teaches you how to navigate through it. The same is true of your inner light. You may not feel joyful. You may not feel strong, but that doesn't mean your light is gone. It means you are being taught to find it in a different way, not in accomplishments, but in presence, not in energy, but in awareness, not in feeling good, but in simply allowing what is to be felt without resistance. Darkness teaches you things that light never could. It teaches you patience, because healing does not happen on command. Growth does not happen overnight, and peace is not something you download like an app. It grows quietly beneath the surface, like roots under the soil, like stars behind the clouds. Darkness teaches you humility, because no matter how wise or strong you are, there will always be moments when you break, when you weep, when you fall to your knees. And that's not weakness, it's the deepest kind of strength. To admit that you're human, to surrender your pride, to say, I don't know, I can't see, but I'm still here. Most importantly, darkness teaches you compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Because when you sit with your own pain, without running, without judging, you begin to understand the pain of others. You begin to see how everyone is carrying something unseen. You begin to soften, not just toward yourself, but toward the whole world. And that softening, that is the beginning of true light. The Buddha once said, if you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your path. But sometimes you don't have a lamp. Sometimes you are the one searching in the dark. And that's okay. Because even in the dark, your footsteps matter. Even in the dark, your breath is sacred. Even in the dark, your willingness to keep walking is an act of bravery. So if you find yourself in darkness right now, please don't rush to escape it. Don't try to replace it with false light. Don't pretend to be okay just to make others comfortable. Instead, sit with it, breathe with it. Let it wrap around you, not as a prison, but as a cocoon. Because this darkness is not the end of you. It is the space where your next self is forming, and when the time comes, you will emerge. Not untouched by sorrow, but transformed by it. Your light will return. But it will not look the same. It will not be loud or showy or desperate for attention. It will be quieter, deeper, wiser. It will be the kind of light that does not blind, but guides. The kind of light that knows where it came from. The kind of light that remembers the dark and shines because of it. 5. You don't need to know the meaning. You need to feel the moment. One of the most exhausting weights a human heart can carry is the relentless pressure to figure everything out, to know why things happened the way they did, to understand what your life is leading to find some grand, clear, permanent meaning behind all the suffering, all the waiting, all the wandering. When life feels heavy and you are filled with sadness or emptiness, your mind begins its frantic search for an explanation. Why do I feel this way? What is the lesson here? What's the purpose of continuing when I don't even know where I'm going? The questions multiply until they form a storm inside you, spinning faster than your spirit can hold. You may think that finding the answer will set you free. But what if the real freedom is not in solving the puzzle of life, but in learning how to sit peacefully in the mystery of it? In Buddhism, we are taught to let go of the obsessive need to define everything, because meaning is not something that can always be grasped with the mind. It's not a neatly wrapped explanation. It's not a tidy sentence that makes all the pain feel justified. Meaning is much more subtle than that. It's not always revealed in the middle of a moment, but often long after it has passed. And sometimes it's not revealed at all. Sometimes the experience itself is the meaning, not because it offers answers, but because it awakens presence. So many people are stuck in their heads, trying to make sense of life, trying to extract purpose from their pain, as if it were a riddle to be solved. But while the mind is racing for answers, the body is begging to be felt. The heart is asking to be held. The soul is whispering, I don't need meaning right now. I need stillness. I need honesty. I need to breathe. Because in truth, not everything painful has to be understood right away. Some emotions are not puzzles. Some experiences are not stepping stones. Some things happen not to teach you a lesson, but to bring you back to yourself. Think of the way water flows in a river. It doesn't ask, why this direction? It simply follows the landscape. It moves around rocks. It changes speed. It becomes still in deep pools. It rushes in steep places. It doesn't always know where it's going, but it's always in motion. And that movement itself is life. You are not here to have every answer. You are not here to construct a perfect map. You are here to feel the river of this moment as it flows through you. To become intimate with the sensations of now, the rise and fall of your breath, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the quiet ache in your chest, the way your fingertips curl when you feel something deeply. These things are not distractions from meaning. They are the heart of it. So often we miss the sacredness of the moment because we are too busy trying to make it into something else. We try to turn sadness into strength before it has softened us. We try to turn confusion into clarity before we've even allowed ourselves to sit in the fog. But in Buddhism, this rushing is the root of suffering. We suffer not because we feel, but because we don't allow ourselves to fully feel. We resist. We overthink. We try to speed up the process. But the moment you stop resisting, something beautiful happens. The mind quiets. The body relaxes, and the heart begins to speak in a language too deep for words. Maybe your sadness doesn't have to be justified right now. Maybe your emptiness doesn't have to be filled. Maybe your confusion doesn't need to be solved. Maybe it just needs to be felt, fully and gently, like rain on your skin. Maybe your only task in this moment is to be with this moment. To enter it without fear, without needing to name it or change it. Because in doing so, you begin to remember something you've always known, but often forget. Life is not happening in some distant future when everything finally makes sense. Life is happening here, in this very breath, in this very beat, in this very silence between your questions. The truth is, meaning does not shout. It does not knock on your door with a speech prepared. It does not always arrive wrapped in clarity or comfort. Often, meaning is quiet. Meaning is subtle. Meaning grows in the spaces where you stopped trying to control the experience and started letting the experience touch you. That walk you took when your mind was heavy, that moment of eye contact with someone who truly saw you, that breath you took after a long cry. These are not dramatic events, but they are deeply alive, and they carry a truth that no explanation ever could. And if you ever feel overwhelmed by the fact that you don't know what your life means right now, take a moment to return to your body. Feel your feet against the ground. Feel your ribs expanding with each breath. Feel the sensation of being here, not in your plans, not in your fears, but in the gentle presence of now. Let the moment be what it is. Let yourself be what you are, because in this surrender, a quiet kind of knowing begins to rise. Not the kind of knowing that speaks in words, but the kind that speaks in peace. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." Because the present moment is not a means to something better. It is the something better. It is not a stepping stone. It is the destination. And even if it feels sad or lost or uncertain, it is still real, and it is still yours. So today, if you find yourself lost in questions you cannot answer, if you're drowning in a need to make everything meaningful, pause, let go, come back, not to meaning, but to presence, not to understanding, but to feeling. Because when you stop trying to force meaning and start allowing yourself to feel the moment as it is, you begin to awaken to a deeper truth, that maybe you were never meant to understand this part of your journey. You were only meant to experience it, and sometimes that is more than enough. 6. Nothing is permanent, not even this sadness. There is a moment often in the midst of great sadness when it feels like the sorrow will never end, like it has dug its roots so deep into your soul that you will never again remember how it feels to be light, to laugh without effort, to wake up without the heavy weight pressing down on your chest. It begins to whisper to you, this sadness. It tells you this is who you are now, that this is how it will always be. That joy is something you lost long ago and will never find again. And in the echo of that whisper, you begin to believe it. Not because it is true, but because you are too tired to argue with it anymore. But my dear friend, let me tell you something the Buddha taught, something that can shift the entire ground beneath your feet. Everything is impermanent. Everything. This teaching is not just a concept. It is a deep, universal truth woven into the fabric of all existence. It is called anicca in Pali, and it is one of the 3 marks of existence in Buddhism. It means that no state, no emotion, no experience, no identity, no pain, and no joy remains forever. Everything arises, and then it passes. Everything is born, and then it fades. Not because something is wrong, but because this is the nature of life. Constant change, constant flow, a dance of appearing and disappearing, breathing in and breathing out. And so too is your sadness. What you are feeling now may be overwhelming. It may feel like a storm that will swallow you whole. But just as no storm in the sky has ever lasted forever, neither will the one inside you. Even the heaviest rain runs out of clouds. Even the wildest winds eventually become still. And even the darkest night ends in dawn, not because the night was a failure, but because change is inevitable. That is what makes life both beautiful and painful, and it is also what makes healing possible. But in order to truly experience the freedom of impermanence, you must be willing to be with your sadness instead of fighting it. You must allow it to move through you instead of trying to suppress it, avoid it, or rush it away. The more you resist what you feel, the longer it lingers. The more you fight the wave, the more it pulls you under. But when you soften into the moment, when you stop labeling sadness as wrong and start seeing it as a temporary visitor, it begins to lose its grip on you. It no longer defines you. It simply passes through you like wind through an open window. Think about the way seasons change. Spring does not argue with winter. Summer does not try to cling to autumn. The leaves fall when they must, and the snow melts when it's time. Nothing in nature rushes. Nothing in nature holds on. And yet, everything transforms over and over again. You, too, are nature. You are not separate from this sacred rhythm. Your sadness is not a flaw in your design, it is part of your cycle. And even now, in this moment that feels frozen, something inside you is quietly shifting. Slowly, subtly, but surely. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but trust this. Healing is happening beneath the surface. Like seeds beneath the soil in winter, your growth is not gone. It's just not visible yet. And that's okay. Not all progress is loud. Not all change is dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen silently in the background of your awareness while you're simply surviving another day. The Buddha often spoke of observing emotions like clouds in the sky. They come, they go, and they leave no trace. But only if you don't cling to them. Only if you allow them to be what they are. Sadness is not dangerous. What makes it heavy is the story you wrap around it. The belief that it is wrong, the fear that it will last forever, the shame that you are feeling it in the first place. But what if you could look at your sadness without judgment? What if you could greet it like an old friend who came to tell you something important, and then, when it was done, it would go? You don't need to rush your healing. You don't need to get over it. You don't need to pretend to be okay when you're not. All you need is to remember that this is temporary. This moment, this emotion, this chapter, you have already survived countless endings. You have already been through days you thought would break you. And yet here you are, still breathing, still rising, still capable of love, of presence, of awakening. There will come a morning, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but a morning nonetheless, when you will wake up and the heaviness will have softened. Not because someone rescued you, not because the pain magically disappeared, but because you stayed, because you honored your sadness, because you allowed it to speak, to move, and eventually to leave. And on that day, you will understand what the ancients meant when they said, "This too shall pass." Not just as a quote, not just as words, but as a truth you lived through, a truth you carried like a stone in your chest, and then set down when the path became lighter again. You will smile, not the fake, forced smile of performance, but the quiet, honest smile that comes from having walked through darkness and found yourself still standing. Nothing is permanent. Not your joy, not your fear, not your sadness, not even the version of you that is listening to these words. You are not a fixed object. You are a living process, a flowing river, a breathing cosmos, a being in constant evolution. And every moment, no matter how painful, is part of that sacred unfolding. So breathe, stay, be gentle with yourself. Trust the impermanence of this moment. It will not last, but your courage to face it, that will remain, that will shape you, that will carry you into the next moment, and the next, until one day you look back and realize you made it through. Not by rushing, not by resisting, but by remembering that you were never meant to hold on forever. You were meant to let life flow through you, and that includes the sadness too. 7. Your sadness is the most honest part of you. Don't abandon it. In a world that worships happiness, celebrates constant positivity, and encourages you to move on as quickly as possible, sadness often becomes something you're taught to hide. From a young age, you may have been told not to cry, to smile for the camera even when your heart was breaking, to act strong even when you were falling apart inside. Over time, without even realizing it, you begin to internalize a dangerous message that sadness is weakness, that tears are a burden, that vulnerability makes you less worthy of love or respect. And so, slowly, quietly, you learn to abandon the very part of yourself that needs your love the most. But Buddhism offers a different understanding, one that does not push sadness away, but invites it to stay for a while. One that does not see sorrow as an obstacle to your path, but as part of the path itself. In the Buddhist view, sadness is not shameful, it is sacred. It is not proof of your failure, it is proof of your sensitivity, your aliveness, your capacity to feel the fullness of life without shutting it out. Sadness, when allowed to be seen, becomes a doorway, not to more suffering, but to deeper self-understanding. Because in your sadness, you are not pretending, you are not performing, you are simply present with what is real, what is raw, and what is asking to be healed. You see, sadness does not come to punish you, it comes to remind you of what matters, to point out the gap between how you are living and how your soul longs to live. It shows up when something needs your attention, not your judgment, but your gentle awareness. Sadness is not your enemy. It is your inner compass saying, something has been lost here, something needs to be held. Something inside you is asking not to be fixed, but to be witnessed. And the most dangerous thing you can do in these moments is abandon yourself, not outwardly perhaps, but inwardly, turning away from your own heart when it is crying out for compassion, distracting yourself with noise, covering your wounds with forced positivity, telling yourself to get over it when you haven't even begun to sit with it. The path of awakening, the Buddhist path, is not about bypassing your pain. It's about walking into it, slowly, kindly, and with reverence. It's about learning how to be with what hurts, not to punish yourself, but to offer it the one thing it has always needed, your loving presence. Your sadness is honest. It does not pretend. It does not lie. It strips away the layers of denial, expectation, and illusion, and leaves you with something tender, something true. The part of you that aches is also the part of you that loves deeply, that remembers how much something meant, that carries grief not because you are broken, but because you were brave enough to care. In this way, sadness is a mirror. It reflects back to you the depth of your own humanity, the stories you've carried, the dreams you've lost, the people you've held and had to let go. And in doing so, it gives you a chance not to erase the past, but to honor it, to say, this mattered, I mattered, what I felt was real. And this is why we must stop seeing sadness as something to be ashamed of. We must stop silencing the ache inside us just because the world is uncomfortable with emotions it cannot control. We must stop pretending to be okay when we are not. Because every time you push sadness down, you push truth down. You bury your aliveness, you numb your sensitivity, and you become a stranger to yourself. But when you make space for your sadness, when you sit with it like you would with a dear friend in pain, you begin to reconnect with your own soul. You begin to soften, to breathe, to feel again. And something beautiful begins to unfold. Not immediately, not all at once, but gently, like a flower opening in slow motion. You begin to see that you are not fragile for feeling deeply. You are powerful, because it takes great strength to remain open when life has hurt you. It takes courage to keep your heart soft in a world that tells you to harden. The Buddha taught the importance of karuna, compassion, not just toward others, but toward yourself. He understood that healing is not born from harshness, but from tenderness. And so, when your sadness rises again, and it will, as all emotions do, don't push it away. Don't run from it. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Listen to it. Ask it what it wants you to know. Ask it what part of you still needs love. And then give yourself permission to offer that love, not perfectly, but sincerely. And know this, your sadness is not the whole of who you are. It is a chapter, not the entire book. It is a cloud, not the entire sky. but it is a necessary part of your sky, a part that brings the rain, that waters your growth, that washes your spirit, that softens the soil of your heart so something new can grow there. And when you honor it, when you allow it, when you hold it with kindness instead of fear, it transforms, not into joy necessarily, but into peace, into clarity, into a kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to shout. There will come a day, maybe sooner than you think, when the sadness begins to lift. Not because you forced it to leave, but because you finally made peace with its presence. And in that moment, you'll look back with eyes that are clearer, softer, wiser. You'll see that your sadness did not break you, it revealed you, it brought you back to yourself, and you'll thank it, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in a world full of masks, what could be more healing than that? 8. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel sad again. It means you learn to walk with it. There's a common misunderstanding in the world today, a silent expectation we place on ourselves and others, that healing should mean the end of pain, that if you're truly healed, you will never feel broken again, that if you've grown spiritually, emotionally, or mentally, you'll no longer struggle, no longer cry, no longer fall into sadness. It's the quiet pressure behind so many of our disappointments, this belief that we should be over it by now. That time should have erased the hurt, that wisdom should have removed the ache, that strength should have made us immune to sorrow. But let me tell you, from the perspective of Buddhism and deep inner truth, healing is not a finish line. It is not a switch that flips from wounded to perfect. It is a path, a relationship, a lifelong practice of walking beside your sadness, not away from it. You see, healing does not remove the weather from your soul. It does not prevent the rain from falling again. It does not stop the wind from sometimes howling through the branches of your heart. What healing does, real, grounded, compassionate healing, is it teaches you how to walk through the storm with more grace. It teaches you to stop fearing the clouds. It teaches you to bring an umbrella, light a candle, and hold your own hand when the night gets cold again. The teachings of the Buddha never promised the absence of suffering. In fact, one of the first and most foundational teachings is dukkha, the truth that suffering is woven into the fabric of life, that to exist is to feel loss, to love is to risk pain, to hope is to risk disappointment. These truths are not meant to depress you, but to awaken you. Because once you stop trying to outrun suffering, you begin to make peace with it. You stop judging yourself for not being constantly happy. You stop treating sadness as a step backwards, and you begin to understand that sadness can exist alongside your peace, without taking it away. Healing means you no longer panic when the old sadness returns. It means you no longer think something is wrong with you when grief knocks again. You welcome it, not with joy perhaps, but with understanding. You say, "Ah, there you are again. Come in. I know how to sit with you now." That is what healing looks like. Not perfection, not emotional immunity, but deep familiarity with your own inner world. A sense of groundedness that holds steady even when the waves come back. And they will come back. The sadness you thought you had outgrown may return on a rainy afternoon. A memory you thought you had buried may rise while walking through a quiet street. A song, a scent, a word may bring the ache rushing back as if it never left. And for a moment, you may feel disappointed in yourself. You may think, "I thought I was done with this. I thought I healed." But the path of awakening is not about being done. It's about learning to begin again and again, with more patience, more gentleness, more presence each time. Imagine a mountain climber. They may climb the same mountain many times, but each time they know the terrain a little better. They know where to step, where to rest, how to pace themselves. They may still feel tired, they may still slip, but they no longer fear the mountain itself. That's what healing does to your inner landscape. It doesn't flatten the mountain, it just gives you stronger legs, steadier breath, and a deeper trust in your ability to ascend it again. In Buddhist practice, we speak often of mindfulness, the art of being fully present with whatever arises without judgment. When sadness returns, mindfulness invites you not to analyze it, not to label it as regression, but simply to notice it, to name it softly. Ah, this is sadness, this is tenderness, this is longing, and to breathe with it, to sit beside it as if it were a guest you no longer fear, not because it no longer hurts, but because you've learned how to hurt consciously, kindly, without collapsing. Healing also opens the door to compassion, not just for yourself, but for others. When you've sat with your own sadness long enough, you begin to see it in others. You begin to soften when someone lashes out, knowing that maybe they are hurting too. You begin to listen more and fix less. You begin to offer presence instead of solutions. Because you know from your own experience that sometimes what people need most is not to be told how to feel better, but to be reminded they are not alone in how they feel. This is why the most healed people are often the gentlest, not because they've never suffered, but because they've allowed suffering to make them softer instead of harder. They've chosen to stay open even when it hurt, and that choice, to remain open, is the essence of Buddhist wisdom. It is not strength in the conventional sense. It is not about always being okay. It is about being real, being here, being awake to the full range of your human experience, and not turning away from any of it. So if you are healing now and sadness still visits you, please don't think you're doing it wrong. You are not failing. You are deepening. Every time you choose to stay instead of run, every time you choose to breathe instead of numb, every time you choose to feel instead of pretend, you are healing. Even if it doesn't feel like progress, even if no one else sees it, even if all you did today was survive the day with grace, that is enough. That is the work. That is the practice. Remember, your sadness is not a stain on your progress. It is a thread in the tapestry. And as you continue to walk this path, with each step taken in awareness, in softness, in truth, you will begin to see that healing was never about removing the darkness. It was about learning how to hold your own light in the midst of it. Not because the sadness disappeared, but because you stopped disappearing when it arrived. 9. Even in sadness, you are still growing. There is a quiet lie that sadness tries to tell you, a subtle, creeping illusion whispered from the shadows of your heart, that because you feel lost, heavy, or broken, you are not growing. That because you are sad, you are stuck. That this stillness, this exhaustion, this aching stillness inside your chest means something in you has stopped working, that your journey has paused, that your spirit has failed you. But my dear friend, nothing could be further from the truth. For even now, even in this very moment of sadness, confusion, or numbness, you are still growing, gently, silently, in ways the eye cannot see and the mind cannot yet comprehend. Buddhist teachings remind us that growth is not always obvious. It is not always loud. It does not always announce itself with breakthroughs, energy, or motivation. In fact, some of the deepest, most transformative growth happens precisely when you feel like nothing is happening at all. It happens in the space between seasons, in the unseen roots beneath the soil, in the nights when you cry quietly into your pillow, unsure if anything will ever make sense again. In those moments, the outer world may look still, but inside your soul, something ancient is moving. Realignment is taking place. Old patterns are unraveling. Deep wisdom is forming. You are becoming, not despite the sadness, but through it. Think of the forest in winter. On the surface it looks lifeless. The trees are bare. The air is cold. The ground is hard. There are no blossoms, no bird songs, no green leaves dancing in the wind. And yet, below the surface, there is activity. Invisible to the eye, the trees are drawing inward, conserving energy, strengthening their roots. The soil is quietly preparing for spring. Life has not disappeared. It has only changed form. It has gone inward, beneath the surface where no one can see. The same is true of you. When you feel emotionally barren, when joy seems distant and everything inside feels grey, it does not mean your soul has stopped growing. It means your energy has turned inward. You are tending to the invisible. You are healing the unseen. You are not performing for the world because your spirit is building something sacred in the silence, a deeper understanding, a softer heart, a steadier wisdom. You are not broken. You are wintering. And winter is not death. It is preparation. But we live in a world that rewards productivity, visibility, and constant forward motion. We are praised for blooming, but rarely supported when we are falling apart. We are taught to chase results, measure progress, and keep pushing, even when our hearts are asking us to slow down. In this kind of world, sadness is often seen as regression, as something to hide or overcome quickly. But Buddhist wisdom offers a more compassionate view. It reminds us that everything in nature grows in cycles: expansion and contraction, bloom and decay, light and shadow, joy and sorrow. None of these are mistakes. They are part of the rhythm of life. And just like nature, your soul knows how to rest, how to reset, and how to rebuild itself quietly in the dark. This is why it is so important not to judge your growth by how you feel in any one moment. Feelings are weather. They pass. Your sadness today does not erase the work you've done. It does not cancel the healing you've walked through. It does not diminish your worth or slow your evolution. In fact, your sadness might be a sign that something in you is ripening, that you are being softened so that new seeds can take root, that your heart is expanding, making space for something deeper, more authentic, more aligned. And what is growth, if not the courage to remain open in the face of pain, to allow yourself to feel instead of numbing out, to keep breathing even when you don't know what's next? This kind of growth doesn't get applause. It doesn't look impressive from the outside, but it's real, it's sacred, and it changes everything, slowly, steadily, from within. Even your tears are part of this growth. They are not weakness, they are release. They are water returning to the earth. They cleanse, they soften, they carry emotions that words cannot hold. And after the tears, something subtle shifts. Maybe not immediately, but eventually you feel a little lighter, a little clearer, a little more grounded. That is growth, not the kind that shows up in milestones or achievements, but the kind that reshapes your very way of being, the kind that deepens your presence, expands your compassion, strengthens your soul. And if right now you feel like you're doing nothing, remember this: a tree does not grow by force, a river does not flow by effort, a flower does not bloom by willpower. Growth is not always active. Sometimes it is in the resting, in the stillness, in the surrender. Trust that this phase, this sadness, this season of pause has a purpose, even if you can't name it yet, even if you never fully understand it. Trust that your sadness is not a void. It is a womb, and from it something new will emerge. The Buddha once said, "As a lotus flower is born in water, grows in water, and rises out of water to stand above it unsoiled, so I, born in the world, raised in the world, having overcome the world, live unsoiled by the world." You too are the lotus, and this sadness, it is your water. It is where your roots take hold. It is what feeds your unfolding. It is what pushes you upward toward the light. So the next time you feel heavy, the next time sadness visits your door again, don't see it as a sign of weakness or failure. See it as a companion on your journey, a gentle guide reminding you that even now, even here, even when nothing seems to be changing on the outside, you are still growing, still awakening, still becoming something more whole than you were yesterday. Let the sadness stay as long as it needs. Let it teach you. Let it hold your hand. And then, when it's ready, let it go. Not because you've conquered it, but because you've outgrown what you no longer need to carry. Sadness is a portal back to your true self. There is a hidden gift within sadness, one that most people never recognize because they are too busy trying to escape it, too busy trying to numb it, cover it, distract themselves, or pretend it isn't there. But the truth is, sadness, when met with awareness and compassion, does something profound. It strips away all the noise. It takes you out of the roles you've been performing. It unravels the masks you've been wearing. It silences the endless inner monologue that says, I must be more, do more, achieve more to be enough. And in that silence, in that stillness, in that aching honesty, something sacred is revealed. Sadness becomes a portal, not to despair, but to something deeper, something ancient, something true. Sadness becomes a doorway back to your true self. In the teachings of the Buddha, the journey toward awakening is not about becoming something new. It is about remembering who you already are beneath all the layers the world placed on you. Sadness helps peel those layers back, not because it is pleasant, but because it is real. It humbles you. It returns you to the basics, to breath, to body, to silence, to what is essential. When you are sad, you stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop pretending that you are fine when you are not. And in that surrender, you begin to see yourself clearly for the first time in a long time. Not the version of you others expect, not the version you've curated for approval, but the raw, honest presence that exists beneath it all. You begin to remember that you are not your job, not your title, not your social media, not your relationship status, not your productivity. You are not the things that have happened to you. You are not the roles you've played. You are something simpler, more quiet, and far more enduring than any of those things. You are awareness itself. You are life observing itself. You are the one who watches the sadness, not the sadness itself. And yet, without sadness, many people never pause long enough to remember that truth. Joy, as beautiful as it is, often keeps us busy, keeps us outwardly focused, keeps us moving toward the next thing. But sadness slows us down. It stops us. It brings us to our knees. And sometimes that is the only position from which we can truly see the sky. Sadness forces you to listen, not to the world, but to the voice within, the voice that has been whispering all along, but was drowned out by the noise of modern life. That voice does not scream. It does not demand. It speaks in stillness, in subtle truths. It says things like, you are enough as you are. You are allowed to rest. You are not alone, even when you feel isolated. You don't need to fix yourself. You only need to come home to yourself. And that home is not found in external success. It is not found in the approval of others. It is found in presence, in truth, in being fully awake to what is happening now, even when what is happening now is sadness. When you allow yourself to walk through that sadness without judgment, without resistance, and without rushing to be happy again, you emerge not as a weaker version of yourself, but as a more rooted one, a more compassionate one, a more authentic one. You begin to realize that you don't need to chase after happiness. That happiness was never a destination. It was always a natural byproduct of alignment, and alignment comes not from pretending, but from being whole, being willing to bring all parts of yourself into the light, including the sad ones. This is why the spiritual path is not about constant bliss. It's about integration. It's about welcoming both the joy and the sorrow, the light and the shadow, the clarity and the confusion, and seeing them not as opposites, but as sacred partners in your growth. In Zen, it is often said that enlightenment is not about escaping the world. It is about fully embracing it, fully embracing yourself, and that means embracing the days when your heart feels heavy, the nights when you cry and don't know why, the moments when everything feels uncertain, because in those moments your ego dissolves and your spirit speaks. Your sadness is not random, it is not a flaw, it is a sacred summons. It is the part of you that knows something is out of alignment. It is your inner compass pointing you back to what matters, back to love, back to presence, back to the wisdom of your body, back to the quiet strength that lives within you, not the strength of control, but the strength of surrender, because it takes great courage to sit with sadness without fixing it. It takes great maturity to meet your brokenness with gentleness instead of shame, and it takes great wisdom to recognize that your pain is not something to be ashamed of, it is something to be honored. This is the great paradox of sadness. It feels like it's breaking you, but in truth, it's breaking through you, cracking open the hard shells you built around your heart, dissolving the illusions that kept you small, revealing the soft, luminous core of who you truly are. The you that doesn't need to prove anything. The you that doesn't need to chase anything. The you that was always there, waiting beneath the noise. The Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree not to escape suffering, but to understand it. He didn't rise as someone who had never felt pain. He rose as someone who had made peace with it, who had walked into the fire and emerged with deeper compassion. That is what sadness can do for you, if you let it, if you stay with it, if you bow to it as the sacred teacher it truly is. And so, the next time sadness arrives, don't close the door on it. Don't treat it like a mistake to be corrected or a problem to be solved. Sit with it, listen to it, ask it what part of you needs to be heard, what part of you has been ignored for too long, what part of you is longing to be seen, not by the world, but by you. Because that's the gift sadness offers again and again. It brings you back to yourself. And when you stop running from it, you find something even more precious than happiness. You find peace. Peace that doesn't depend on your circumstances. Peace that isn't afraid of sorrow. Peace that holds your entire humanity with open arms. The sadness you carry isn't a weight. It's a bridge to others. There are days when your sadness feels like a burden too heavy to name. It lives in your chest like a silent anchor, pulling at your energy, your breath, your desire to reach for life. You carry it quietly, not because you choose to, but because you've never quite known how to put it down. You still smile. You still show up. You still speak when spoken to. And yet, behind the smile, there is a silence that longs to be heard. Behind the laughter, a tenderness that aches to be held. And so you walk through life with this hidden heaviness, wondering if anyone sees it, if anyone truly understands what it costs to hold yourself together when you feel like falling apart. But what if this sadness you carry is not a weight meant to crush you, but a bridge, a quiet, invisible connection between your heart and the hearts of others? What if the very ache you try so hard to hide is the part of you most capable of reaching someone who feels just like you? In Buddhism, compassion is not born from avoidance of pain. It is born from walking through pain with awareness. And not just your pain, but the recognition that everyone, in their own way, is carrying something too. Your sadness is not yours alone. It is a thread that weaves you into the great human tapestry. It is a language spoken by all souls, even if no words are ever exchanged. You see, when you've truly felt sadness, not just on the surface but deep in your bones, you begin to see differently. You stop judging so quickly. You stop assuming that everyone who looks happy is whole. You begin to notice the little things. The way someone hesitates before speaking. The way someone's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. The quiet sighs. The nervous laughs. The way people say, "I'm fine," with a softness that trembles. You recognize those things because you've lived them. And suddenly the world is no longer made of strangers. It is made of fellow travelers, fellow carriers of invisible wounds, fellow beings doing the best they can with what they've been given. Sadness softens the walls you've built around your heart, and in that softening something sacred is born. Empathy. Not the kind of empathy that pities others from a distance, but the kind that feels with them, that sits beside them without needing to fix anything, that offers presence instead of platitudes. The kind of empathy that arises only when you've met your own sadness without running from it. Because once you've held space for your own brokenness, you learn how to hold space for someone else's. This is how the sadness you carry becomes a bridge. Not a weakness, not a failure, but a sacred opening. It becomes the place from which your compassion flows, the well from which your kindness is drawn. And the beautiful paradox is this: the very thing you thought made you separate, the sadness, the sorrow, the longing, is the thing that most deeply connects you to others. We often think connection comes from shared joy, shared success, shared celebration, and it does. But the deepest connections, the ones that last, the ones that change us, are forged in moments of shared pain, in the quiet understanding that says, "I see you, I've been there, you're not alone." In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of interbeing reminds us that nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected: the tree and the soil, the cloud and the rain, the river and the sea, you and me. Your sadness, then, is not some private flaw to be hidden in shame. It is part of the great human experience. It is part of what makes you real. And when you honor it, when you allow it to be seen, not as drama, but as depth, you give others permission to do the same. Think about the times you've been moved most deeply by someone. Was it when they seemed perfect? Or was it when they were vulnerable? When they let the mask slip and showed you their humanity? When they spoke not from their strength, but from their softness? The truth is, we don't trust people because they are flawless. We trust them because they are honest. And there is nothing more honest than the quiet ache of a heart that is still learning how to stay open in a world that sometimes feels like too much. So do not be ashamed of the sadness you carry. It is not a weakness to be hidden. It is a tenderness to be honored. It is the part of you that still feels in a world that often asks you to go numb. It is the part of you that refuses to harden, that refuses to forget, that refuses to abandon the ones who are hurting. The world needs that. It needs your soft heart, your gentle presence, your quiet knowing, because the people around you are carrying sadness too. Some speak it, some don't. Some wear it on their faces. Others bury it deep beneath laughter. But it's there, and when your sadness meets theirs, something beautiful happens. A kind of alchemy, a sacred recognition, a moment of shared light in the darkness. The Buddha did not teach us to avoid sorrow. He taught us to understand it, to hold it with mindfulness, to walk with it, not as our enemy, but as our teacher. And in doing so, we don't just heal ourselves. We become a healing presence for others, not through advice, not through fixing, but simply through being who we are. Wounded, yes, but awake. Soft, yes, but strong. Sad at times, but still full of love. So let your sadness be seen, not by everyone, not all the time, but by yourself and by those who have earned your trust. Let it soften you, let it slow you down, let it deepen your gaze and widen your embrace. Let it be the reason you forgive more, judge less, listen better. Let it be the thread that connects your soul to every other soul, silently whispering, "Me too." Because that is the secret that sadness has been trying to tell you all along. You were never meant to carry it alone. The sadness you survive becomes the light you carry for others. There are moments in life when your sadness feels unbearable, when your heart feels too heavy to lift, when your spirit, worn thin from holding on, wonders how much more it can carry. You walk through the day with a quiet ache, and at night you lie awake with thoughts that won't stop turning. There is no clear reason, perhaps, no sudden catastrophe, just a slow unraveling, a heaviness that clings to your ribs like fog that won't lift. And in the silence of those moments when it feels like no one sees you, you begin to ask, why? Why this weight? Why me? What good can come from this much pain? And yet, what you cannot see now, what sadness always hides at first, is that this pain is shaping something sacred within you. Slowly, quietly, patiently. It is not breaking you, it is deepening you, because every sadness you survive becomes something more than just a memory. It becomes a lantern, a quiet, glowing light that you will one day carry, not just for yourself, but for others who are still walking through the dark. In Buddhism, the path to compassion is paved with suffering, not as punishment, not as karma, but as purification, as awakening, because it is only by moving through the valleys of sorrow that your heart gains the depth it needs to truly hold another. Real empathy is not learned from books. It is not taught in classrooms. It is carved into your being by the times when you felt lost, abandoned, uncertain, and still chose to keep breathing, still chose to keep walking, still chose to keep loving, even with a shattered heart. You see, your sadness is not useless. It is not meaningless. Every time you sit with it instead of running from it, every time you let yourself feel what others are too afraid to touch, you become someone who can hold space for another in a way no one else can. You become a sanctuary, a safe place, not because you have all the answers, but because you know how to sit with someone in their pain without trying to fix them, because you've learned how to sit with yourself in yours. The wounds you've tended to in silence are the very ones that give your presence weight. The nights you've cried alone are the reason someone else won't feel alone when they cry near you. Your softness, the one that came from breaking and mending and breaking again, becomes the very thing that makes others feel safe to soften too. The way you've held your own grief becomes the reason you know how to cradle someone else's. The light you carry did not come from avoiding the dark. It came from walking through it and choosing to stay open. And make no mistake, choosing to stay open is a kind of bravery that this world rarely celebrates. Because staying open in the face of sorrow means feeling what most try to numb. It means grieving without certainty. It means loving people who may never fully understand your heart. It means continuing to show up, to work, to relationships, to life, even when your soul is exhausted. But in doing so, something beautiful happens. You don't just heal, you become healing. You become the proof that it's possible to walk through fire and emerge softer, not colder, stronger, not harder, wiser, not bitter. In Buddhist tradition, the bodhisattva is not someone who escapes suffering, but someone who transforms it into compassion and chooses to return to help others walk the path. They shine not because they are perfect, but because they understand. They carry a light not born from avoiding darkness, but from befriending it. And whether you realize it or not, your own journey is preparing you for that same role. The sadness you survive is not just for you. It is building a lantern in your heart, one that will one day light the way for someone else. And no, you may not know when or how that moment will come. You may not realize it when it happens. It might be something as simple as the way you listen to a friend, or the warmth in your eyes when you meet a stranger's pain. It might be the way you sit with someone in silence and they say, "I feel safe with you," or the way someone tells you, "You understand in a way no one else does." In those moments, you'll begin to understand why you walked through your own pain. Not as punishment, not as meaningless suffering, but as preparation, as transformation. This is not about glorifying pain. It is not about romanticizing sadness. It is about honoring the truth that everything you have lived through has shaped you, and that even now, when you still feel unsure or weary, your presence carries more light than you know. You are not just surviving, you are becoming. And even if you never speak of your sorrow out loud, it is part of your wisdom. It gives depth to your laughter. It gives patience to your words. It gives kindness to your touch. And one day when someone sits in front of you, unsure how they will go on, not needing advice, but simply someone who gets it, you will be that person. You will not need to say much. You will simply be there, and they will feel it. The quiet strength, the unspoken understanding, the light that does not shout but simply glows, the light that says, "I've been there too, and you don't have to be alone." So hold your sadness gently. Let it shape you without rushing it away. Let it become the soft flame in your chest that teaches you how to love better, live deeper, and show up more fully for others. Because you are not just healing for yourself. You are becoming a healing presence for this world. The light you carry is not loud, but it is real, and it was born from everything you thought you'd never get through, but did. Letting sadness teach you how to stay present. Sadness has a way of pulling us out of time. When it arrives, it often drags our hearts into the past, into memories that ache, words that linger, moments we wish we could return to or rewrite. Or it sends our minds racing toward the future, filling us with dread, fear, or the heaviness of imagining things falling apart. In its grip, it feels almost impossible to remain here, in this moment. The present feels empty, like a space we don't want to be in. It feels like a room with the windows closed and the light dimmed, and all we want is to get out, back to what once was, or forward to what might be better. But here is the quiet truth that Buddhist wisdom gently reveals. Sadness is not here to push you out of the moment. It's here to bring you back to it, not in a punishing way, but in a deep, sacred way. Sadness calls your attention to what's real, not the illusions your mind creates, not the stories you attach to your suffering, but the raw, tender, immediate experience of being alive. When sadness is allowed to be felt fully, without resistance or judgment, it becomes a portal into presence. Because in the heart of sadness is sensation, a tightness in the chest, a lump in the throat, a stinging behind the eyes. These are not just physical symptoms to be escaped, they are invitations. Your body is not betraying you when you are sad. It is guiding you. It is asking you to return to your breath, to feel what is true without rushing to fix it. And this, in its purest form, is mindfulness. Mindfulness, in Buddhism, is not a trick to calm the mind or control emotions. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to this breath, to this step, to this exact moment, however it feels. It is the art of paying gentle attention to what is, without clinging or pushing away. And when sadness arrives, it gives you the perfect opportunity to practice this return. Because sadness slows you down. It humbles you. It softens your edges. It brings your awareness inward, away from the chaos of doing and into the stillness of being. But to let sadness teach you presence, you must meet it with curiosity instead of fear. You must let go of the idea that sadness is something you must escape as quickly as possible, that it is a sign you are failing, that it means something is wrong. Sadness is not a problem, it is a passage, a moment of recalibration. It asks you to pause, not to punish you, but to reintroduce you to the miracle of now. Because when life is busy and full of joy, it's easy to take the moment for granted. But when you are sad, every breath becomes a prayer, every soft sound becomes sharper, every small comfort becomes precious. In sadness, time stretches. Silence becomes thicker. And if you resist the urge to flee that silence, you will begin to hear things you couldn't hear before. Your breath, your heartbeat, the quiet stirrings of your own soul. You will begin to see how much life is happening in this moment, not out there, but inside you. The rising and falling of the chest, the warmth of your hands, the weight of your body on the earth. These are not distractions from your sadness, they are its companions. They are the anchors that remind you that you are still here, still alive, still held by something greater than your current emotion. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from clinging to desires, to outcomes, to stories, to identities. But sadness, when embraced mindfully, loosens your grip on those things. It teaches you impermanence, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience. You begin to realize that the present moment is the only thing that ever truly exists. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only this moment, this breath, this sensation, this feeling is real. And in that realization, sadness becomes sacred, because it strips away the illusion that you are in control. It humbles the ego. It reveals the fragility of life, and in doing so, it awakens gratitude for the breath that still moves through you, for the fact that you are able to feel at all, for the small, quiet beauties that sadness makes you notice, the way the light filters through your window, the sound of distant birdsong, the softness of your own tears as they fall. When you are truly present with your sadness, you begin to touch something deeper than pain. You begin to touch truth. The truth that you are not separate from life. You are life. You are the sky that holds both sunshine and storm. You are the ocean that holds both waves and stillness. And in this deeper presence, you begin to feel less afraid of the sadness, less desperate to make it go away. You stop seeing it as an intruder and begin to see it as a teacher. This is why the great Buddhist teachers speak so often about embracing your suffering, not to romanticize it, but to understand it, to learn from it, to befriend it, because the more you run from sadness, the more it chases you. But when you turn toward it, breathe with it, and allow it to unfold naturally, it begins to soften, it begins to teach, it begins to pass. Not because you forced it to, but because you gave it what it needed, your presence. And over time, something profound begins to happen. Your relationship with sadness changes. It no longer feels like drowning, it feels like depth. It no longer feels like chaos, it feels like clarity. You begin to realize that the presence you cultivated during sadness remains even when joy returns. That the awareness you developed becomes a foundation for your entire life. That the gentleness you practiced becomes part of how you speak, how you listen, how you love. Sadness, then, becomes not an interruption of life, but a deepening of it. A reminder to slow down, to feel more, to remember what really matters, and most importantly, to remember who you are when everything else falls away, because your true self is not afraid of sadness. Your true self does not resist the moment. Your true self is the part of you that can sit in silence and still be whole, that can breathe through tears and still be strong, that can hold sorrow and gratitude in the same hand. So the next time sadness comes, don't try to escape the moment. Don't chase a future where it's gone. Don't reach back into the past for a time when you were happy. Instead, sit down, place your hand over your heart, close your eyes, and return. Return to the breath, return to the body, return to the now, because this moment, however heavy, however quiet, however tender, is enough. And you, as you are, in this very breath, are already home. True freedom is found when you stop resisting sadness. So much of our suffering doesn't come from what we feel, it comes from what we fight. Sadness, by itself, is a natural human emotion, a sacred, fleeting expression of the heart. But the moment we resist it, the moment we tense against it, the moment we believe we shouldn't be feeling this way or that it must be removed as quickly as possible, that's when the suffering begins. We create a second layer of pain, not from the emotion itself, but from the war we wage against it. We are told from a young age that sadness is something to fix, that it's a problem, that it makes us weak, broken, unstable, and so we push it down, we distract ourselves, we smile when we want to cry, we laugh when we're hollow, we numb with entertainment, with overwork, with endless scrolling and shallow conversations because the silence feels too dangerous. But deep inside, something continues to ache, because sadness, when ignored, doesn't dissolve. It waits. In Buddhism, this constant pushing away, this resistance to reality, is seen as the root of dukkha, the dissatisfaction or suffering that permeates much of human life. The Buddha taught that the way to end suffering is not by changing what we feel, but by changing how we relate to what we feel. The goal is not to escape sadness. The goal is to stop resisting it, to meet it as we would a dear friend who comes to our door in tears, not with fear or judgment, but with space, presence, and compassion. Imagine for a moment you are standing in a river. The current is strong, and your instinct is to brace yourself, to fight against the pull, to resist the water. But the more you struggle, the more exhausted you become. The force of the river doesn't lessen, it just wears you down. But if you let go of that resistance, if you stop trying to fight the current and instead let it carry you, something shifts. You may still be in the river, but now you're moving with it. You're floating. You're flowing, you're free, not because the water changed, but because you did. Sadness is like that river. It is not here to drown you. It is here to carry you inward, toward the deeper parts of yourself you've forgotten. But to be carried, you must release your grip. You must allow the current to take you. You must trust that you will not be lost, even in the depth of your emotions. And that is the essence of true spiritual freedom, not the absence of sadness, but the absence of resistance to sadness. Freedom is not always loud or visible. It doesn't always look like laughter or joy. Sometimes freedom looks like crying without shame, sitting with grief without explanation, allowing your body to feel heavy, your breath to be slow, your thoughts to be quiet. Not because something is wrong, but because something is finally being seen. When you stop resisting sadness, you stop abandoning yourself. You come home to what is real. And in that homecoming, something miraculous happens. The sadness begins to soften, not because you forced it away, but because you made space for it to breathe. Emotions, like people, want to be heard. And when they are heard, truly listened to, they no longer need to scream. Sadness, when welcomed, becomes a whisper. It becomes less like a wave crashing over you and more like rain gently falling around you. You realize that it doesn't need to be controlled, it needs to be felt. And once it is, it begins to move through you, like the wind, no longer trapped, no longer stuck, no longer resisted. This is what it means to live in harmony with life, to allow all that arises within you to come and go as it must. Joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, energy and fatigue. Nothing needs to be clung to, nothing needs to be pushed away. This is the freedom that Buddhist practice points to, not some transcendent state above emotion, but a full embodied presence with emotion. The Buddha himself experienced sadness. He wept, he grieved, he knew loss. And yet, he did not run from these experiences. He entered them with mindfulness. He stayed awake inside them. And because he did, he found peace, not by changing the world, but by changing the way he met it. You too can find this peace, but it will not come through escape. It will come through surrender. To stop resisting sadness is to stop demanding that life be any different than it is. It is to accept the moment as it is, with open hands and an open heart, not in apathy, but in awareness, not in defeat, but in depth. You begin to see sadness not as something wrong, but as something sacred, a sign that your heart is still open, that you are still alive, that you are still connected to the world, even if that connection hurts. And over time, you may begin to notice something else. that the less you resist sadness, the more fully you can experience joy. That when you make space for sorrow, you also make space for laughter. That when your heart is no longer clenched in fear of pain, it becomes wide enough to hold the entire spectrum of life. You stop needing to feel good all the time, and instead you begin to feel everything with honesty, with courage, with grace. This is the gift that sadness offers when you stop resisting it. It becomes your teacher, your mirror, your path. It teaches you to slow down, to listen, to breathe, to stay. And in that staying, you begin to discover the kind of freedom that no one can give you and no one can take away. A freedom that lives inside your presence, inside your willingness to feel, inside your decision to no longer run. So the next time sadness rises, and your first impulse is to distract, to flee, to pretend you're fine, pause. Place a hand over your heart, close your eyes, breathe, and say to yourself gently, I will not abandon you. I will sit with you. I will not resist this moment. I will let it unfold. And just like that, you have already begun to walk the path of liberation. Because true freedom is not found in escaping your emotions. It's found in becoming so present with them that they no longer control you. Sadness doesn't close your heart. It teaches you how to keep it open. There are moments in life when sadness feels like a wall, a slow, rising silence between you and the world. You wake up and move through the day, but everything feels just slightly out of reach. Food loses its flavor, the sunlight feels distant. Laughter sounds like an echo from another life. And your heart, once open and eager to feel, to love, to care, now feels guarded, not cold perhaps, but cautious, fragile, as though one more disappointment might be the thing that breaks it completely. And so, quietly, often without words, you begin to close. You smile less, speak less, reach out less. You move inward, away from others, away from connection, not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply that even being vulnerable feels like a risk you cannot afford. And somewhere inside, the belief begins to form, maybe my heart is too soft for this world. Maybe it's safer to feel less. But in the Buddhist path, the heart is not seen as something to be hardened for survival. It is seen as the very gateway to awakening. And sadness, far from being a threat to this path, is seen as a teacher. Not a teacher of isolation, but of openness. Because sadness, when fully felt, doesn't close the heart. It reveals its vastness, its sensitivity, its sacred capacity to stay soft, even while breaking. The Buddha taught that true love, true compassion, is not born from a heart that has never been hurt. It is born from a heart that has felt pain deeply and still chooses to remain open. That is real strength. That is the spiritual warrior's way. And sadness, believe it or not, is how your heart learns this strength, not through force, but through tenderness. You see, when you close your heart in sadness, you don't protect it, you isolate it. You trap yourself in a loop of loneliness, believing that no one else could understand, that it's easier not to feel than to feel too much. But when you allow your heart to remain open, even as it aches, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to feel not just your own pain, but the pain of others. Not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that connects you. You see yourself in their eyes. You recognize your story in their silence. You begin to understand that sadness is not just personal, it is universal. This is the beginning of true compassion. Not the kind that pities, but the kind that understands. The kind that sits beside someone and says, I don't need you to explain. I've felt this too. That kind of compassion doesn't come from reading books. It doesn't come from listening to lectures. It comes from staying open in your own moments of sorrow, from refusing to shut down, from choosing to breathe through your breaking rather than turning it into bitterness. And this openness is not weakness. In Buddhism, it is seen as the highest strength. In the practice of metta, loving-kindness meditation, you are asked to begin by cultivating compassion for yourself. Especially in times of difficulty, especially when the heart wants to close. You learn to place your hand over your chest and say, "May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I accept myself as I am. May I keep my heart open even now." And the more you practice this, the more you realize something sacred. Your heart is not as fragile as you thought. It can break and heal. It can feel deeply and remain whole. It can be tender and still strong. Sadness teaches you this, not by removing the pain, but by showing you that you can survive it, that you can sit with it, that you can feel everything and still stand, still love, still hope. And in this way, sadness becomes a sacred practice. Every tear becomes a prayer. Every aching breath becomes a meditation. Every lonely night becomes a classroom. You stop running from the pain and start listening to it. And it tells you things no happiness ever could. It tells you where you've been holding back, where you've been pretending, where you've been needing more care, more stillness, more gentleness from yourself. It tells you that even now, especially now, you are worthy of love. Not for what you produce, not for how strong you appear, but for simply being, for breathing, for showing up with honesty, even when you don't have all the answers. Sadness doesn't ask you to be perfect. It doesn't want you to fake joy or mask your fatigue. It just wants you to stay with yourself, to stay with your breath, to stay with the truth of your experience, no matter how raw or uncomfortable. Because in that staying, in that quiet courage to not abandon your heart, you discover the very thing you've been searching for all along, not a life without pain, but a heart strong enough to walk through it. And the more you walk through it, the more your heart grows, not harder, but wider, capable of holding joy and sorrow in the same breath, capable of laughing again without guilt, capable of trusting again, even if it still remembers what it felt like to be hurt. This is not forgetting, this is not pretending, this is not bypassing, this is the integration of wisdom, the proof that your heart has not only survived sadness, but has been transformed by it. So no, sadness does not close your heart. It tests its hinges. It creaks the doors open a little wider. It invites the light in slowly, tenderly, through the cracks. And one day, without warning, you'll notice it. The way you soften towards someone else's pain. The way you pause before reacting. The way you offer kindness without needing a reason. And you'll realize, this didn't come from avoiding sadness. This came from walking through it, awake, aware, and open. The lotus, in Buddhist symbolism, grows through the mud. Not in spite of it, but because of it. The mud is not the enemy. The mud is the medium through which transformation occurs. Your sadness is that mud, and your heart, when it remains open through it, is the lotus. So, when sadness comes again, and it will as all emotions do, greet it, sit with it, feel it. Don't harden, don't flee, stay, open, breathe. Because each time you do, your heart expands. And in that expansion, you become not just someone who has survived sadness, but someone who has become a source of light through it. The stillness within sadness is where you find your soul. There is a silence inside sadness that most people never reach, not because it isn't there, but because we're always trying to escape before we arrive. We feel sadness begin to stir in the body, a weight behind the eyes, a tightness in the chest, a heaviness in the limbs, and immediately we react, we distract, we analyze, we push it away with noise, activity, or denial. We brace against it like it's a wave meant to drown us. But what if we didn't? What if we didn't turn away? What if instead of fleeing we stayed? What if we followed that sadness all the way into its depths? Because deep within every sadness, beneath the ache, beneath the tears, beneath the sharp edges of loss and longing, there is a stillness. A silence not made of emptiness, but of presence. A sacred quiet that is not the absence of feeling, but the fullness of it. And in that stillness, something ancient waits for you, something gentle, something true. In the teachings of Buddhism, we often speak of the unshakable peace that lies beneath all things, not above suffering, not beyond it, but within it. That peace is your soul, and sadness, when fully embraced, is the path that leads you back to it. Most of us fear this path. We fear that if we stop running from sadness, it will consume us, that if we allow it to deepen, it will become endless. But the truth is, it's the resistance that makes it feel unbearable. It's our clinging to how things should feel, our craving for constant happiness, our belief that we are only okay when we are cheerful, that turns sadness into suffering. Sadness alone is not the enemy. In fact, sadness is often the first honest breath we take after months or years of pretending. It is the body's way of saying, now, feel this, you're ready. And if we listen, if we sit still long enough to truly feel, we begin to hear something beneath the sadness that words cannot explain. The Buddha described this as the citta, the heart-mind, the very seat of consciousness. It is not the thinking mind that analyzes and judges. It is the observing mind, the aware mind, the part of you that is not lost in thought but watching it. And in moments of deep sadness, when all distractions have fallen away, when you are too tired to pretend or perform, that observing mind begins to shine through. You begin to feel not just your emotions, but the awareness that holds them. You begin to see that even your sorrow is not all of you. It is an experience arising within a deeper presence. And that presence is still. It is not rushed. It does not panic. It does not ask you to be any different than you are. It simply watches, breathes, holds space. This is the soul, not as some abstract spiritual idea, but as the living essence within you. The part of you that remains untouched by all the noise, all the roles, all the chaos. And you don't find it in joy. You don't find it in success or excitement or busyness. You find it in stillness. And sadness, when met with courage, brings you there. Because sadness clears the clutter. It pauses the performance. It strips away the layers of identity and reveals the bare truth of your humanity. In those moments when you feel too broken to carry on, too weary to pretend, too lost to explain, it is then that your soul steps forward, not with grand answers, not with blinding light, but with quiet presence, with gentle breath, with the soft, unwavering message, you are not alone, you are not broken, I have been here the whole time. This is why Buddhist meditation so often begins with stillness, with sitting, with silence, not to escape the world, but to return to yourself, because in stillness the truth reveals itself, the pain becomes clearer, the stories become quieter, the heart begins to speak, and sadness, real sadness, when held mindfully, is a kind of meditation in itself, a moment of meeting your soul without masks. But to find this stillness, you must allow the sadness to unfold at its own pace. You must breathe through the discomfort without rushing to feel better. You must trust that stillness is not numbness, that quiet is not emptiness, that when everything feels like it's falling apart, something deeper is actually coming together. A homecoming, a reunion with the part of you that never left, but was buried beneath layers of noise, judgment, and resistance. Sadness often feels like a collapse, but sometimes collapse is exactly what's needed, not as destruction, but as surrender, as the falling away of everything that is not true. And in that surrender, you learn to listen, not to the loud demands of the ego, but to the soft wisdom of the soul. You learn to stay, to breathe, to stop asking the sadness to leave, and instead ask, what do you need me to see? And often the answer is simple. The soul does not speak in riddles, it speaks in stillness. It says, "You're safe, you're enough. You don't have to fix this right now. You don't have to be okay to be worthy." These truths do not arrive like lightning, they rise like steam from quiet waters. You must be still enough to feel them, and sadness, if you let it, brings you to that stillness. Not through force, but through humility. Because sadness softens the mind, it weakens the ego, it silences the noise of ambition, of image, of striving, and brings you back to what matters, not what looks good, not what impresses others, but what is true, what is felt, what is real. And in this truth, in this sacred return to stillness, you begin to see that sadness is not here to take your peace, it is here to reveal it, not the fleeting peace of distraction or avoidance, but the deep peace that comes from no longer running, from sitting down inside your own brokenness and finding that you are still whole, that even now, even in sorrow, there is something unshaken inside you, something luminous, something that does not need to be fixed, only remembered. This is the gift of sadness when met without resistance. It leads you not into despair, but into presence, into stillness, into a kind of quiet faith in the life within you, the faith that even this pain has its purpose, that even this ache is sacred, that your soul is not lost, it is simply waiting for you to stop and listen. So let yourself be still, let the sadness speak, let the silence deepen, and when you feel the calm presence that rises from within, don't question it. That is your soul, that is your truth, and that stillness is home. Your sadness is not a detour, it is the path itself. There's a quiet belief that lives deep in the minds of many, that sadness is a wrong turn, a side road, a failure, that it's something you're supposed to avoid, something that takes you off course from your real life, your happy life, your strong life, your peaceful life. And so when sadness comes, we meet it with resistance. We feel shame. We look for the fastest way out. We tell ourselves, "I need to get back on track." We treat our sorrow like an interruption, as if it doesn't belong. But what if this belief is not only untrue, but the very reason we suffer more than we have to? What if sadness is not the detour, but the path? Buddhist teachings guide us again and again toward the truth that everything is the path, not just the joy, not just the clarity, not just the lightness, but the heaviness too, the confusion, the tears, the long nights when you're curled up with your thoughts and your breath is shallow and you don't know why. The days when nothing feels wrong and yet everything hurts. These aren't signs that you've strayed, they are signs that you're walking exactly where you need to be, because the real path, the inner path, the spiritual path, is not about arriving somewhere perfect. It's about becoming more intimate with reality, more available to what is, and what is often includes sadness. To walk a path of awakening is not to walk away from suffering. It is to walk into it, with your eyes open and your heart soft. It is to stop asking life to only give you what feels good, and instead begin asking, what is this moment trying to show me? When you see sadness as something to fix, you miss its wisdom. But when you see it as part of your practice, as part of your journey, everything changes. You stop fighting it, you stop judging it, and in that surrender you begin to see sadness not as a wall, but as a doorway, a passage into deeper presence, deeper self-understanding, deeper compassion. You begin to realize that sadness is not separate from growth. It is growth, not the kind of growth that looks impressive or productive, but the kind that shapes your soul quietly, that strengthens your roots, that prepares you to hold more truth, more love, more life. Think of a tree. It doesn't only grow in spring, it grows in winter too, when the branches are bare, when the days are dark, when the world looks lifeless. Beneath the surface, the roots are deepening, The structure is strengthening. Energy is gathering for a season not yet here. You may not see it, but the growth is happening. The same is true of you. Your sadness is not nothing. It is not wasted time. It is a sacred winter, and winters are not detours. They are part of the cycle of life. But we live in a world that idolizes summer, that worships brightness and productivity and ease. We are told, directly and indirectly, that happiness is success and sadness is failure, that peace means always feeling good. And so we learn to fear our own inner seasons. We learn to pathologize our emotions, to treat them as problems. But Buddhist wisdom asks us to step outside of this conditioned thinking, to return to the natural rhythm of life, to remember that all things rise and fall, appear and dissolve. That sadness is not the enemy of peace. It is a wave within it. And when you stop seeing sadness as a detour, you can finally begin to walk with it. You can meet it not with urgency but with curiosity, not with shame but with presence. You can say, "Ah, here you are again." You can sit with it like an old companion, not because it's pleasant, but because it's real, and what is real is always worth being with. This kind of being with, this deep, non-judgmental presence, is what transforms sadness from a heavy fog into a soft guide. It shows you things you would have missed if you'd run away. It brings you face to face with the parts of yourself you've hidden, the unmet needs, the forgotten dreams, the lingering wounds. It invites you to listen more closely, to live more honestly, to love more deeply, not in spite of your sorrow, but because of it. And over time you begin to notice something gentle and quiet beneath the sadness, a kind of stillness, a kind of clarity, a kind of love that asks for nothing but your attention. This is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of awareness, the same awareness that exists in meditation, in prayer, in nature. It doesn't fix your sadness. It simply holds it. It says, even this belongs. Even this is part of your becoming. In Buddhist practice, we often return to the breath, not because breathing changes the world, but because it returns us to the truth of the moment. When you're sad, returning to the breath is not a technique to escape. It's a way to re-enter your body, to be here, to remember that sadness is just another form of aliveness, that it is not something outside the path. It is the path. The breath you take when you're crying is still a sacred breath. The tears that fall on your pillow are still part of your practice. The longing in your chest is still a gateway to presence. This is what the path really looks like. Not a straight line, not a glowing road with no shadows, but a spiral, a slow unfolding, a returning again and again to yourself, even when yourself is hurting, even when you don't have answers, even when all you can do is breathe and stay. And as you walk this way, something remarkable begins to change. Not the sadness, but your relationship with it. It begins to feel less like something you're trapped in and more like something you're learning from. Less like a storm and more like a season. And seasons, as you know, do not last forever, but they do shape the land. They change the texture of the earth. They leave behind something new. So too will this sadness leave something in you, a softness, a strength, a spaciousness that was not there before. And one day, when the season shifts again, you will look back and say, I did not leave myself. I did not abandon the path. You will feel proud, not because you avoided the pain, but because you faced it, because you honored it, because you stayed. And that, more than anything, is what it means to live this path, to walk each step with presence, with courage, with kindness, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. So the next time sadness arrives, do not say, why now? Say instead, welcome. Not because it feels good, but because it is part of your becoming. Because this too is the path, and you are walking it beautifully, one breath, one truth, one step at a time. the gentle strength hidden inside your sadness. We often think of strength as something sharp, something hard, a steel wall, a clenched jaw, a straight spine held high in the middle of chaos. We admire the ones who never flinch, the ones who bury their pain, the ones who appear untouched by sorrow, untouchable by grief, and in doing so we forget the quiet, humble strength of the ones who feel deeply, the ones who cry and stay open, the ones who fall to their knees when sadness breaks over them like a wave and still choose to rise without armor. We forget that there is another kind of strength, one that is not loud, one that does not come from resistance or defense, one that blooms slowly in the center of a tender heart. This is the kind of strength that sadness reveals, not the kind that dominates or protects, but the kind that endures, that softens without shattering, that bends without breaking, that holds space for sorrow without running from it. It is the gentle strength that lives in your breath as you sit in silence with your pain and say, "I will not abandon myself today." In Buddhism, true strength is not measured by how much you resist life. It is measured by how deeply you can meet it without clinging, without aversion, without needing to be anything other than what you are in this moment. Sadness is not a weakness. It is not a flaw in your path. It is a sacred test, not a test of performance, but a test of presence. Can you stay with what hurts? Can you stay soft while you're grieving? Can you breathe gently even when your chest feels heavy? These are the real questions. Not how quickly can you get over it, not how strong can you appear, but how honest can you be with yourself? Because to feel sadness fully, without turning it into anger, without turning it into blame, without hiding it behind a fake smile, that is a strength most people never learn. It is not taught in schools, it is not celebrated in movies, but it is the strength that transforms a human life from surface to depth. Your sadness is not proof that you are fragile. It is proof that your heart is alive, that it's still willing to feel, even after everything. And if you've ever let yourself truly sink into sadness, not dramatize it, not resist it, not numb it, but just be with it, you've probably noticed something strange. The more fully you feel it, the more it begins to change. At first, it's sharp, heavy, a fog in the mind, a weight on the chest. But when you allow it, when you breathe with it, when you make space for it, it softens, it slows down, it becomes something else. It becomes stillness, clarity, even peace. This doesn't happen because the sadness is gone. It happens because you've stopped fighting it, because you've stepped inside it and something within you has expanded enough to hold it. That expansion, that quiet willingness to sit with the fullness of your experience is the gentle strength that Buddhist practice points toward again and again. The kind of strength that doesn't seek to dominate life, but to dance with it. The kind of strength that says, "Let this moment be what it is. I will not close myself." And here is what is rarely said, but so important to remember. It is not weakness to break down. It is not failure to fall apart. It is human. It is necessary. The lotus does not rise without first being rooted in mud. The heart does not open without first being cracked. The soul does not remember its depth without first losing its way. Sadness is not your undoing. It is your unfolding. It is how life strips away what is not essential and brings you home to the part of yourself that cannot be destroyed. You are not here to be invincible. You are here to be real, to be awake, to feel all of it, the joy, the sorrow, the clarity, the confusion, and to discover in that feeling the strength that doesn't need to be proven, the strength that simply is, the kind that makes you slower, not weaker, quieter, not emptier, deeper, not distant. This is the strength that allows you to sit with someone else's grief without trying to fix it, the strength that lets you hold someone's shaking hands and say, "I don't have answers, but I'm here." It's the kind of strength that allows you to forgive, even when you haven't been apologized to. The kind that lets you speak gently to yourself on the days when you feel lost. The kind that stays awake in the dark and whispers, "This too is part of the journey." Because sadness, when honored instead of feared, becomes a source of connection, not just with yourself but with others. You begin to notice it in the eyes of strangers. You begin to soften toward the small irritations of life. You begin to carry a compassion that can only come from having suffered and survived without closing your heart. You begin to realize that every person is carrying something, that pain doesn't always look the same, that behind every angry outburst there may be sorrow, that behind every silence there may be exhaustion, that behind every smile there may be grief. And that awareness, that capacity to see beneath the surface, is a rare gift. But you only gain it when you've gone beneath your own surface first. When you've sat with your own sorrow long enough to understand that it does not make you less, that it does not need to be hidden, that it is, in fact, part of what makes you whole. In Buddhist tradition, monks are often taught to meditate on suffering, not to become depressed, but to become free, free from the illusion that suffering is a mistake, free from the idea that sadness is something to fix, free from the belief that joy is the only sign of spiritual progress. Because real freedom is not found in avoiding sorrow, it's found in being able to walk through it without losing your center, without losing your tenderness, without losing your ability to feel. So if you are in pain right now, if sadness is sitting quietly beside you like a shadow, I want you to know, you are not broken. You are in the process of remembering something essential, something most people forget in the chase for perfection. You are remembering how to sit still, how to breathe, how to let the world move through you without closing your heart. That is not weakness. That is strength of the rarest kind. The kind that does not shout. The kind that does not shine under spotlights. The kind that lives in the quiet decision to stay, to keep going, to keep feeling, to keep loving, even when it hurts. And one day you'll look back and realize that this sadness you feared would drown you, this ache you thought would never end, became the very soil from which your gentleness grew. It became the reason you stopped judging, the reason you started listening, the reason you learned how to soften instead of shut down. You'll look back and see that sadness did not take your strength. It showed it to you. And in the silence that remains when the storm passes, you'll find something even greater than happiness. You'll find peace, not because the pain is gone, but because you no longer need to hide from it. That is the gift of sadness. That is the beginning of real freedom. Even in darkness, you are still becoming. There is a kind of silence that only exists in darkness. A silence not just of sound, but of direction, of clarity, of meaning. It's the moment you wake up and forget why you're trying. The day you go through your routine and wonder, what's the point of any of this? It's the deep sigh you release when everyone thinks you're fine, but inside you're quietly aching for something more, or maybe just for something to make sense. These are not the moments we write songs about. These are not the highlights of our lives. No one applauds you for feeling lost. There are no awards for holding yourself together when everything inside feels like it's falling apart. But the truth is, these invisible moments of struggle, these long stretches of uncertainty, sadness and silence, are often the very places where something deep and sacred is unfolding. Even if you can't feel it right now, you are still becoming. Buddhist teachings remind us again and again, we are not what happens to us. We are what we do with what happens. And even when you feel like you're doing nothing, when you're simply breathing through the weight of another day, when you're moving slowly through fog and fatigue, you are still walking the path. You are still alive in the unfolding. You are still being shaped by every experience, even the ones you wish you could skip. Darkness is not the end of your story. It is a chapter, and sometimes the most important chapters are the ones where nothing seems to be happening, at least not on the surface. Consider the seed underground. It lies buried in cold soil, surrounded by silence, swallowed by stillness. It cannot see the light. It cannot feel the sun. There is no applause for its struggle, and yet something is stirring inside it, a silent splitting, a sacred cracking, the first quiet movement toward growth. That seed, in its darkness, is becoming, and so are you. We are taught to value the moments when we bloom, when we achieve, when we are seen and celebrated. But in Buddhist wisdom, we are also taught to honor the moments of invisibility, the times when our roots are deepening beneath the surface, when our strength is not loud but quiet, when our growth is not seen but felt, in the form of patience, of endurance, of simply choosing to stay. This kind of becoming is slow. It does not chase milestones. It does not need external validation. It is the becoming that happens in heartbreak, in loneliness, in uncertainty. It is the becoming that arises not in spite of the darkness, but because of it. When life feels empty, when you're surrounded by things that once brought joy but now feel dull and distant, it's easy to believe you've gone backward. But sometimes emptiness is not a step back. Sometimes it is a space being cleared for something new to enter, for something old to be released, for something essential to rise from within. We often misunderstand emptiness. We treat it as a flaw, as a failure. But in Buddhist philosophy, emptiness is not lack. It is potential. It is spaciousness. It is the wide, open field where transformation becomes possible, when you let go of what no longer serves you, an identity, a dream, a relationship, a belief. You may feel lost, but you are not lost. You are just in between, and the in-between is holy ground. It's where you learn that you don't need to rush to fill every silence, that you don't need to understand everything right away, that it's okay to not have a 5-year plan, that it's okay to feel aimless for a while, because direction is not always found in thinking. Sometimes it's found in stillness, in allowing, in trusting that what is meant for you will not require you to become someone you're not. When the lights go out and the world feels far away, the only thing left to do is go inward. And that is not a punishment. It is an invitation to sit with yourself, to breathe, to listen, to ask questions you've been avoiding. Who am I when I'm not achieving? What truly matters to me? What am I still holding on to that no longer fits the shape of my soul? These questions are not comfortable. They don't offer quick answers, but they are the doorways to awakening. They lead you not out of the darkness, but deeper into it, until you realize that the darkness is not the enemy. It is the womb, the cocoon, the quiet temple where the old you dies so the new you can emerge. And what will emerge? Not a version of you who has all the answers, not someone who never feels sad again, but someone who is no longer afraid to feel. Someone who knows how to be with life exactly as it is, messy, uncertain, beautiful. Someone who has learned that even in their worst moments, they were still on the path. The Buddha himself said, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. And sometimes that beginning does not come with fireworks or fanfare. Sometimes it comes in the form of a quiet breath, a single moment of presence, a gentle whisper from within that says, I'm still here. That whisper is everything. It is the voice of life itself moving through you. It is the reminder that even if you feel like you're standing still, your soul is moving, your spirit is unfolding, your path is being revealed, one silent step at a time. So if you are sitting in a season of darkness, know this. You are not failing. You are not stuck. You are not being punished. You are in a process. A sacred, invisible process that cannot be rushed. Your job is not to force your way into the light. Your job is to stay soft in the dark, to keep your heart open, to keep breathing, to keep choosing love, especially for yourself. Because one day, when you least expect it, something will shift. A new thought, a new hope, a new moment of joy. And it won't come because you pushed the sadness away. It will come because you honored it, because you stayed, because you let the night do its work. And you will look back and realize that the darkness did not break you. It made you. Not in spite of your sadness, but through it. The meaning you're searching for is already within you. It starts so subtly you barely notice it. A restlessness, a quiet ache. You go through your day like always, brush your teeth, reply to messages, pretend to care. But beneath it all is something hollow, a sense that you're performing life more than living it, that something is missing even if everything looks fine from the outside. You search for answers. Maybe a new career will help, maybe more money, maybe more success. You open books, scroll endlessly, ask others, and even pray, please, let something make this all feel worth it. But the meaning you're chasing always seems just out of reach, like a horizon that moves every time you try to touch it. And in this pursuit, you begin to believe the most dangerous lie of all. That meaning is somewhere else. That fulfillment is in the future. That peace is out there, in a job, a person, a place, or a version of yourself you haven't become yet. But what if it isn't? What if the meaning you are so desperately chasing isn't something you find, but something you remember? In Buddhist teachings, there is a gentle but powerful truth, that everything you seek is already inside you. Not in some metaphorical way, not as a vague spiritual concept, but literally. The peace, the love, the clarity, the purpose, it all lives in you, hidden beneath layers of noise, fear, expectation and distraction. But to reach it, you must stop looking outward. You must turn inward. That's the part the modern world never tells you, because the modern world is built on distraction, on more, on seeking, on endless movement. You are taught to climb, to hustle, to improve endlessly, to compete and compare, as if your soul is a business plan that needs optimizing. But your soul is not a business. It is a garden, and like any sacred garden, it blooms in stillness. It blossoms when nourished with presence, with honesty, with quiet moments of truth, and most of all, with the deep and radical decision to stop running from yourself. Because here is the truth. Most of us aren't really looking for meaning. We're looking for escape from the pain, the confusion, the sadness. We want something to fix the ache, to silence the questions, to make us feel alive again. But escape is not the same as healing. It's not the same as awakening, and it's definitely not the same as meaning. Meaning doesn't arrive as a thunderclap. It doesn't shout or beg for your attention. It arrives in moments. Tiny, holy, ordinary moments. The quiet breath after a long cry. The softness in your chest when you forgive someone. The warmth that blooms when you sit in silence and realize you are okay. Meaning is already woven into the fabric of your existence. It's not waiting to be discovered, it's waiting to be seen. But most of us don't see it, not because it isn't there, but because we're looking with eyes trained by fear and conditioned by society to only value what is loud, obvious, and rewarded. In Buddhist philosophy, this is the delusion we must wake up from, the belief that value lies outside of us, that something must be added to us for us to be whole, that we must earn our way into peace. But you were born whole. You are already enough. You don't need to fix your life to find meaning. You need to be with your life, as it is, not as you wish it to be, not as you hope it will one day become, but as it is now, flawed, confusing, beautiful, and raw. And when you do that, when you stop trying to escape your sadness and instead sit with it, when you stop running from your questions and start holding them gently, something begins to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, like the way night softens into dawn. You begin to feel more present, more alive, more here, and in that presence you begin to see meaning where you once saw nothing. You notice the way the light filters through your window in the morning, the comfort of a warm cup of tea, the peace in simply breathing and knowing that breath was given to you freely. You begin to understand that meaning was never hiding from you. It was waiting for you to slow down enough to notice it. Think about it. How many times have you rushed through a moment only to wish you had it back? How many small beauties have you overlooked because you were too focused on what's next? This is why the Buddha taught that mindfulness is the key, not just to peace, but to meaning. Because when you are mindful, truly mindful, you see clearly. You see the pain, yes, but you also see the miracle of being alive, the fragile, fleeting gift of this moment. And in that awareness, life stops being something you have to figure out and becomes something you get to feel. And that perhaps is the deepest meaning of all, to be fully awake to your own existence, to not let it slip past you in a blur of distraction and ambition, to touch the texture of your own life and say, "This is mine, and I will live it with my eyes open." But what about the hard days? What about when the pain is too loud, when the meaning seems too far away? In those moments, remember this. Meaning doesn't mean constant joy. It doesn't mean you never struggle. It doesn't mean your heart is always light. In fact, some of the most meaningful experiences in life are born from sorrow, from loss, from the sacred space that opens inside you when something breaks. Because when you break, your soul is not destroyed. It is revealed. And in that rawness, you meet yourself, not the version you've performed for the world, but the one who has always lived quietly underneath the noise, the one who doesn't need applause to feel worthy, the one who knows how to sit with pain and still choose love, the one who doesn't chase meaning but becomes it, simply by being real. This is the path, not the path of perfection, the path of truth. And it's a path you walk not by doing more, but by being more present, more honest, more gentle, more alive to the life that's already unfolding inside you. So if you feel lost right now, if the world feels grey and heavy and nothing seems to hold the meaning it once did, don't panic. Don't assume something is wrong. This too is part of the awakening, part of the remembering. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being asked to go deeper, to stop searching, to start seeing. Because the meaning you're chasing is not in a better job or a perfect body or a relationship that finally heals all your wounds. The meaning is in you, in how you hold yourself through all the not knowing, in how you soften when it would be easier to harden, in how you love others even when your own heart is aching, in how you sit in the darkness and still whisper, "I will not give up on myself." That whisper, that is meaning. That breath you just took, that is meaning. This moment, right here, where you are choosing to keep going, to keep feeling, to keep awakening, that is meaning. You don't need to earn it. You only need to remember it. And in remembering it, you return to yourself, the place where you've always belonged, the home that never left you, the sacred presence that is not waiting for your life to become perfect, but is waiting for you to realize that even in your imperfection, you are already whole, and that is enough. Life doesn't need to be fixed, it needs to be felt. There is an ache that arises when you feel like you're constantly falling behind in life, an anxiety that hums beneath your everyday routine, the belief that if you could just fix what's wrong, then everything would finally feel right. Maybe you think if you had more motivation, you'd stop procrastinating. If you healed your past, you'd finally be happy. If you figured out your purpose, the heaviness would lift, and the noise inside you would quiet down. But here's the truth. Most of us are never told. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is not a problem to be fixed. It is not broken machinery that needs repair. Life is not waiting for you to master it. It is waiting for you to feel it. This is one of the most profound teachings of Buddhism, not to run from discomfort, not to judge sadness, not to numb fear, but to be present with life in all of its forms, pleasant and unpleasant, joyful and painful, beautiful and broken. Because the moment you stop trying to fix your feelings, you start to understand them. And in that understanding, transformation begins, not through control, but through compassion. We live in a world that teaches us to react instantly to any discomfort. Feeling lonely? Text someone. Feeling sad? Watch a video. Feeling anxious? Try to distract yourself. Society has trained us to believe that every emotion must be managed, optimized, eliminated, or redirected. But Buddhist wisdom teaches something radically different, that emotions are not interruptions to life. They are part of it, sacred parts, messengers, gateways, and they don't need to be fixed. They need to be felt. The reason so many people feel lost is not because they are broken, but because they are disconnected from themselves, not from their goals or habits or morning routines, but from the felt experience of their own humanity. We are taught to chase the perfect life rather than to live fully inside the one we already have. We are taught to silence pain rather than sit beside it. But nothing silenced ever truly disappears. It waits, it lingers, and over time, what we don't feel becomes what we carry. Until eventually, we are carrying so much unprocessed emotion that even the lightest day feels heavy. But the moment you begin to feel, to truly sit with your sadness, to breathe through your fear, to hold space for your loneliness, you will notice something remarkable. These emotions, which once felt so overwhelming, begin to soften. They begin to release their grip on your chest, not because you fought them, but because you welcomed them, because you finally turned toward them and said, "I'm here, I see you, you are allowed to be here." There is no healing without feeling, no awakening without honesty, no peace without presence. Buddhist teachings don't ask you to transcend your humanness. They invite you to deepen into it, to realize that the goal of life is not to eliminate all pain, but to hold it gently, to meet it with awareness, to see it not as a flaw, but as a thread in the sacred fabric of your being. Because when you really feel something, not analyze it, not label it, not shame it, you bring light to it. You allow it to move. Emotions are energy, and energy, when trapped, becomes suffering. But energy, when allowed to flow, becomes freedom. Have you ever cried, not because someone told you to, but because you finally gave yourself permission to feel? And in that moment, didn't you feel more real than you had in weeks? That is the power of feeling. That is what most of us are missing. Not more control, not more solutions, but more surrender. A willingness to feel what is, without judgment. But surrender is not easy in a world that worships control. We are told to be productive, to be positive, to be perfect. But these ideals are cages dressed as goals, and the more you try to live up to them, the more you will feel disconnected from your own truth. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be honest. You need to be soft. You need to be present, even when presence hurts. And it will hurt sometimes. There is no way around that, because being alive means feeling grief, feeling confusion, feeling the sting of loss, the ache of longing, the tremble of uncertainty. But it also means feeling wonder, joy, love, peace. And you cannot numb one without numbing the other. You cannot selectively silence your heart. If you block out pain, you block out light. So the path is not to escape pain. It is to become spacious enough to hold it, to become a container vast enough to welcome all of life, not just the shiny parts, but the shadows too, because the shadows are not here to hurt you. They are here to show you what you've hidden from yourself. They are your teachers, your mirrors, your chance to become whole. Imagine sitting beside your pain as if it were a guest, not trying to get rid of it, not rushing it out the door, just listening, just offering it your full attention. What would it say? What would it reveal? You might discover that your sadness isn't weakness, it's your longing to be seen. That your fear isn't failure, it's your desire to be safe. That your anger isn't evil, it's your heart's way of saying, "This hurts, and I don't know what to do." When you treat your feelings with respect, they become less frightening. You begin to understand that there is no shame in being sad, no flaw in being afraid, no sin in being confused. These are all parts of the sacred terrain of being human. They do not make you less, they make you real. And being real is what this life is all about. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to figure it all out. You just need to show up with your breath, your truth, and your willingness to feel. The next time you feel low, instead of trying to fix it, try something different. Sit still. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe. Say to yourself, "This is hard, and I'm allowed to feel it." Let the emotion rise. Let it speak. Let it move through you like weather through the sky. And then notice how, after it passes, there is space. There is peace. There is you, stronger, wiser, more alive than before. Because you didn't abandon yourself this time. You stayed. You felt. And in that feeling you reclaimed something the world tries to take from you, your wholeness. This is the path, not the path of force, the path of feeling, the soft, sacred way of being with what is. And when you walk this path, life doesn't become easier, but it becomes more beautiful, more meaningful, more real, because you are no longer trying to fix everything. You are learning to feel everything, and that, in the end, is what sets you free. Not the answers, not the achievements, not the certainty, but the courage to feel deeply, to feel truthfully, to feel completely, because in that feeling, you finally return to yourself. And you realize you were never broken, you were always becoming, and life didn't need to be fixed. It just needed to be felt. The storm is not against you, it is within you, asking to be felt. You sit quietly, but your chest is loud. Thoughts swirl like a cyclone inside your head. Everything looks calm from the outside, your face still, your hands resting. But inside, a storm is raging. It has no name, no warning, no forecast. It comes with a heaviness in your stomach, a tightening in your throat, an ache behind your eyes. And it always asks the same question: what's wrong with me? But what if the storm is not your enemy? What if the storm is not sent to destroy you, but to wake you up? In the teachings of Buddhism, we are reminded again and again that peace is not the absence of storms. It is the ability to sit inside the storm and not lose yourself. Not because you are ignoring it, not because you are numbing it, but because you understand that the storm is you. It is not some force from the outside attacking your mind. It is your own pain, your own grief, your unmet longings, your suppressed truths, finally gathering the courage to rise. And they rise not to punish you, but to be felt. That anxiety you feel in your chest when you try to sleep at night, it is not your enemy. It is a signal, a flicker of life that is asking to be acknowledged. It is the body's way of saying, "I am holding something heavy. Please come sit with me." The storm only feels dangerous when you try to outrun it, because the more you run, the louder it becomes. You distract yourself with scrolling, with goals, with perfectionism. You try to bury the discomfort under piles of productivity and positive affirmations. But what you resist persists. What you suppress festers. And eventually the quiet ache becomes a roar. And yet, even in the roar, there is a gift. Because the storm is honest. It does not lie to you. It shows you the parts of yourself that you've ignored, the parts that feel unlovable, the parts that were never given space to be heard. When a storm rises inside you, it brings with it an invitation, not to escape, but to listen, not to fight, but to feel. This is why the greatest transformation doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from sitting fully in your experience, exactly as it is, without judgment. That's where healing begins. Not with answers, but with presence. Not with a plan, but with patience. We are taught to believe that storms must be solved, that something is wrong if we're not happy, that discomfort is a sign of failure. But this is a deep misunderstanding of life. In Buddhist teachings, suffering, dukkha, is not an error. It is a teacher, a doorway, a pointer toward truth. Think of it like this. When clouds cover the sky, do we scream at the sky for being broken? Do we judge the rain for falling? Number. We understand that the storm is part of nature. It is temporary. It has purpose. And the same is true for your emotional storms. They are part of your inner nature. They are sacred weather passing through your soul, not because you are flawed, but because you are alive. And being alive means feeling. It means having waves crash through your heart when grief arrives. It means trembling with vulnerability when your truth is too big to hide. It means letting go of the fantasy that life should always feel light and easy, because in truth, some of the most meaningful moments in life are born through storms, moments of surrender, moments of clarity, moments when, through the chaos, you realize, this pain is not here to ruin me, it is here to reveal me, to peel away what is false, to soften what is rigid, to show me where I am still holding on. You see, the storm is not random. It rises in response to what has been left unfelt, to the promises you made to others but broke with yourself, to the emotions you swallowed because there was no safe space to express them, to the needs you silenced because you were too afraid to be seen. And the beautiful truth is this: the storm doesn't need to end for you to be at peace. It only needs to be held, gently, lovingly, without resistance. Imagine a child crying, not for attention but for love. That child doesn't need to be fixed. They need to be held, witnessed, told, "You're safe now, I'm here." The same is true for your inner storm. It doesn't need fixing, it needs presence. But presence is not easy in a world addicted to escape. Most of us were never taught how to sit with ourselves. We were taught to fix, to numb, to distract. So when the storm rises, we panic. We believe something is wrong with us. But what's really happening is that something within us is waking up, a memory, a wound, a truth. And instead of running, the most powerful thing you can do is sit down and say, "I'm listening." You might cry, you might tremble, you might feel lost. But in that moment you are doing something sacred. You are reclaiming a part of yourself. You are choosing wholeness over performance, truth over perfection, love over fear. This is the essence of the Buddhist path. To turn towards suffering, not away. To touch it, gently, with awareness. And in doing so, to transform it, not by changing it, but by changing your relationship to it. When the Buddha taught about suffering, he didn't promise to eliminate it. He taught us how to understand it, to meet it with compassion, to stop blaming life for being hard, and instead become strong enough to hold life as it is. You are not broken because you feel pain. You are not weak because you feel overwhelmed. You are not lost because you are in the middle of a storm. You are simply human, and that humanness is not a curse. It is a doorway to empathy, to depth, to a life that is not just impressive on the outside, but meaningful on the inside. The storm that rises in you is not separate from you. It is your teacher. It is your reminder that somewhere, something in you is still tender, still longing, still hoping to be met. And you, with your breath and your awareness and your willingness, are the one who can meet it. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need the storm to go away. You just need to stop pretending it isn't there. You need to stop asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me?" And when you do that, when you sit quietly, breathe deeply, and let the storm speak, you will begin to hear a voice beneath the thunder. A voice that says, "I've been here all along. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to guide you back home." Because the storm is not against you, it is within you. And it is not a threat, it is a mirror that shows you where you've been pretending, where you've been performing, where you've been running, and offers you the chance to stop, to sit, to feel, to awaken. Not to the perfect version of you, but to the true version of you. The one who knows how to weather the storms, not by controlling them, but by dancing with them, by breathing with them, by understanding that sometimes the most healing thing in the world is not to change your life, but to change how gently you hold it. So if the storm is here, welcome it. If your heart is heavy, listen to it. If your mind is racing, slow down and meet it. This storm is not a punishment, it is a passage. And on the other side of it is a version of you that is softer, wiser, and more whole, not because the storm never came, but because you stayed through it. Because you stopped fighting what was rising. Because you finally remembered, you are not here to fix every feeling. You are here to feel them, to let them pass through you like wind through branches, like rain through thirsty earth. And in that allowing, you become what the storm was trying to make you all along. Still, grounded, awake, and alive. You are not your sadness. You are the one who watches. There comes a point in your journey through sadness when the ache grows familiar. It's no longer a sharp shock, but a quiet presence, a kind of invisible companion following you from room to room. You can feel it in the way your energy moves, in the slowness of your steps, in the heaviness that gathers behind your eyes before sleep. There are days you wonder if it will ever leave, and days you almost stop noticing it's there at all. And in those moments, you may begin to ask, is this who I am now? Am I destined to live in this shadow forever? But Buddhism invites us to look deeper, to pierce the illusion that what we feel is the sum of who we are. It offers a quiet, profound truth. You are not your sadness. You are the one who watches. It can be hard to accept at first. After all, feelings are powerful. When you are lost in sadness, it colors everything. It fills your thoughts, wraps around your memories, and bleeds into your hopes for the future. It whispers that you are broken, that something is wrong, that your heart is just a wound that will never heal. It can be so convincing that you start to believe it must be true. But imagine for a moment the sky on a stormy day. The clouds are dark, the air is heavy, and the rain falls without mercy. The world feels drenched in grey. But behind all of that, beyond the clouds, above the wind, the sky itself is untouched. The storm comes and goes, but the sky remains, always open, always present, always vast. You too are the sky. Your feelings, like weather, are real. They come, they change, they have power, but they are not your entirety. You are the one who experiences sadness, not the sadness itself. You are the witness, the vastness, the open presence in which everything appears, changes, and eventually passes away. This is not a denial of pain. In fact, it is the most compassionate way to meet it. When you are able to notice your sadness, not as a permanent identity, but as an experience moving through you, you begin to reclaim the freedom that was never truly lost. You begin to see that even on your hardest days, there is a part of you that remains untouched. A part of you that simply observes, that is curious, gentle, and patient. This awareness, the watcher, the witness, is what the Buddha called pure consciousness. It is the light of the mind that cannot be stained by any passing feeling, no matter how dark. It is the silent center from which you can see everything clearly, without being pulled under by every wave. But for most of us, this is not how we have been taught to relate to emotion. We are trained from childhood to believe our feelings are facts, our moods are identities, our stories are ourselves. When sadness arrives, we think, I am sad, as if sadness is who we are. But there is a subtle, radical difference in saying, I am feeling sadness, or even more simply, sadness is here. In that gentle shift, a gap opens. You are no longer merged with your pain. You have space to breathe, to observe, to be kind. Meditation in Buddhist practice is designed to help you notice this gap. You sit quietly, not to chase away your thoughts or silence your heart, but to watch, to become familiar with the way sensations rise and fall, to notice how emotions visit, linger, and eventually leave, to realize through direct experience that nothing within the mind is permanent, nothing you feel is the whole truth of you. If you close your eyes and breathe, you may notice sadness as a physical sensation, a weight in the chest, a dullness in the head, a pressure behind the eyes. You may notice the thoughts that come, I shouldn't feel this way, or this will never end. You may notice the urge to distract, to fix, to resist. But if you stay, if you simply witness, you begin to see the ever-changing nature of your experience. And behind it all is something that does not change, the quiet, clear space of awareness. This space is your truest self. It is the seat of compassion, the birthplace of wisdom, the home you've always longed for, even as you wandered through the world trying to outrun your pain. You don't need to be free of sadness to rest in this awareness. You only need to remember to look, to pause, to gently turn your attention inward and ask, who is noticing this feeling right now? Who is watching this sadness? And the answer is, I am. Not the I of your personality, not the I of your old stories or wounds, but the deeper I that has been quietly present through every season of your life. The I that watched you as a child, watched you growing, watched you suffering and loving and learning. The I that will still be present no matter what tomorrow brings. To realize you are the watcher is to taste the first real freedom of the spiritual path. Because then, even as sadness arises, you are not its prisoner. You are its witness. You can feel everything, but need not drown in anything. You can be honest about your sorrow without making it your name. This is not just a philosophical idea. It is a practice, one that deepens each time you turn toward yourself with kindness. Each time you notice, sadness is here, and instead of resisting, you breathe and watch. You allow it to be what it is, and in that allowing, you find space. Space is everything. It is the difference between being consumed by fire and watching the flames from a safe distance. It is the difference between clinging to suffering and letting it move through you, trusting that you are not made of your pain. But this space is not cold or detached. It is deeply loving. The more you inhabit it, the more compassion you feel for yourself and for others. You begin to see that everyone is walking through their own storms, believing they are defined by their hardest days. You begin to soften, to reach out, to listen. Not because you know their pain, but because you recognize the watcher in them too. Sadness will still visit. There will be days when it feels heavy, when it knocks the breath from your body, when you can't remember anything but the ache. But now you know how to sit quietly and remind yourself, I am the sky, these are my clouds. You let the weather pass, and in its passing you grow wiser, more gentle, more whole. You do not need to become someone new. You do not need to be endlessly positive. You do not need to banish sadness forever. You only need to remember who you truly are, the vast, quiet space in which all things come and go. The presence that endures, the watcher who watches with love. And when you remember this, you will find that no emotion, however strong, can ever truly destroy you. You will rise again and again from the ashes of your own sorrow, not because you never fall, but because you always return to the truth. You are not your sadness. You are the one who watches, and in that watching, you are free. When you accept your sadness, you transform your life. It is easy to imagine that transformation comes only in moments of triumph. That breakthrough happens when you finally feel happy, finally get what you want, finally fix whatever has been weighing you down. The world is always telling you, don't be sad, stay positive, move on. You hear it in advertisements, in advice columns, in the quiet disappointment when you're honest about your struggles. This world is uncomfortable with sorrow. It wants solutions, quick recoveries, and smiling faces. So you learn to wear your sadness like a hidden bruise, tucked beneath your sleeve, covered with small talk and busyness. You learn to pretend you are already healed. But beneath the surface, the sadness remains. It whispers quietly in the empty hours. It lingers in the corners of your mind. It makes the world look faded and thin, like a photograph left too long in the sun. No matter how far you run, it always catches up, asking to be seen, to be felt, to be held. And each time you push it away, it returns, not because it is cruel, but because it is loyal. It wants to be known. It wants to teach you something essential. In Buddhist wisdom, sadness is not a mistake. It is a messenger. It comes not to hurt you, but to open you. It comes to strip away the illusion that happiness is a destination, that life is only valuable when it feels good. Sadness comes to teach you that being alive is a tapestry, woven of joy and pain, longing and fulfillment, light and shadow. And it is only when you accept every thread that you become truly whole. Acceptance is not the same as resignation. It is not giving up. It is not saying, I guess this is all I'll ever have. Acceptance is the willingness to meet life exactly as it is, with open hands and an open heart. It is the decision to stop fighting yourself, to stop demanding that your feelings change before you will love yourself, before you will rest, before you will allow yourself to just be. Acceptance is a deep breath in the middle of the storm, a softening of the armor you have worn for so long. But acceptance is hard, especially when the world has taught you that pain is shameful, that you must always be moving forward, always improving, always strong. You have been told that accepting sadness means getting stuck, becoming passive, never changing. But the opposite is true. When you truly accept your sadness, something miraculous begins to unfold. You stop wasting energy pretending. You stop exhausting yourself in battle with your own heart. You free up the strength that was once spent on denial, and you discover that beneath your pain, a deeper peace has been waiting. Imagine your sadness as a guest. It knocks on your door, sometimes politely, sometimes with a howl. You can ignore it, pretend not to hear, but it will wait. Or you can open the door and invite it in, sit with it, ask what it needs. Sometimes it will say nothing at all. Sometimes it will pour out stories you thought you'd forgotten, old wounds, lost dreams, the ache of not being seen or held as a child. Sometimes it will simply sit with you in silence, asking nothing but your gentle attention. In the beginning, accepting your sadness feels terrifying. It feels like surrendering to something that will swallow you whole. But in truth, it is not the sadness that is overwhelming. It is your resistance to it. When you stop running, when you stop bracing, when you simply sit and breathe and allow your sadness to exist, you begin to see it for what it is. Not a monster, but a messenger. Not a punishment, but a part of your humanity. You begin to notice that in its presence, your heart grows wider, not weaker. Your breath becomes deeper, not shallower. Your mind becomes clearer, not more clouded. You may still cry, you may still ache, but the tears come and go like rain, and afterwards there is a new freshness, a clarity, a sense of having been cleansed. This is the magic of acceptance. It is not that you solve your sadness, but that you allow it to move. You become the sky, wide and open, allowing every weather to pass through. When you accept your sadness, you create space for other feelings too. Joy returns, not as a forced performance, but as a gentle visitor. You find yourself laughing at something small, a bird outside your window, a memory that suddenly glows golden in your mind. You notice beauty again, in the pattern of shadows on the wall, in the warmth of sunlight on your face. This is not because your sadness has disappeared. It is because you are no longer closed off. You are open to all of it, the hard and the easy, the bright and the dim. Your heart, once shut tight to keep out pain, is now able to receive everything life brings. In Buddhist practice, acceptance is called equanimity, the ability to remain balanced, steady, and present with whatever arises. It is not a passive drifting through life, but an active willingness to meet each moment with full attention. Equanimity does not mean you stop caring. It means you care so deeply that you refuse to abandon yourself no matter what arises. You treat your sadness as you would a frightened child, with patience, gentleness, and love. This is not always easy. There will be days when acceptance feels impossible, days when the old habits return, judgment, avoidance, self-criticism. That's okay. Acceptance does not mean you never struggle. It means you keep coming back again and again to your own side. You remind yourself, even this belongs. Even this has something to teach me. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to get it right every time. Your only task is to remain open as best you can to the fullness of your own experience. And as you practice, something in you changes. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the energy you once spent fighting your sadness becomes energy for living, for loving, for dreaming. You become more patient with others, more understanding of their struggles. You recognize your own pain in their eyes, and you offer them the same acceptance you are learning to give yourself. Acceptance does not erase your sadness. It transforms it. It allows the pain to become wisdom, the longing to become creativity, the grief to become compassion, the sorrow to become connection. You become less afraid of the dark because you know that within it you have discovered your own light. And in this transformation, you become free, not because life is easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You have learned to hold all of it, the joy and the pain, the confusion and the clarity, the moments of feeling lost and the moments of finding home. You are not the sadness itself. You are the space that can hold sadness without breaking. You are the witness, the watcher, the one who remains. Sometimes acceptance comes in quiet waves. You notice that you are less reactive, less anxious, less quick to judge yourself for feeling low. You notice that you can sit with discomfort longer, that you can breathe through fear, that you can let go of the need to control every outcome. Sometimes acceptance comes all at once, a sudden opening, a moment of surrender so total that you weep with relief, finally understanding that you are allowed to be as you are. And sometimes acceptance is something you choose again and again, in every moment, in every breath. You wake up and greet your sadness like an old friend. You carry it with you, not as a burden, but as a teacher. You let it soften you, deepen you, remind you of what matters. You trust that even in your darkest days, you are still growing, still becoming, still worthy of love. This is the heart of transformation, not the escape from pain, but the willingness to stay. Not the banishment of sadness, but the embrace of it. Not the perfection of life, but the acceptance of it exactly as it is. So if you are sad today, be gentle with yourself. If you are tired of fighting, lay down your weapons. If you are afraid to accept your feelings, know that you are not alone. This path is walked by everyone in their own way, in their own time. You do not need to rush. You do not need to have it all figured out. You only need to begin, again and again, breath by breath, moment by moment, to let yourself feel, to let yourself be, To trust that in this acceptance you are not just surviving your sadness, you are transforming your life. Because the true transformation is not found in what you achieve, or in how happy you appear, but in how deeply you are willing to meet your own heart. To welcome all of it, to say yes to your sadness, to trust that in saying yes, you become more alive, more whole, more free. And that, at last, is enough. Your sadness is not the end, it's the door to a deeper life. There are seasons in every human journey that feel like endings. A relationship dissolves, a dream collapses, a chapter closes not with triumph, but with a long, slow ache. The world may keep spinning, but inside you, something is still. You stare at the ceiling in the darkness and ask, is this all there is now? Am I finished before I've truly begun? Sadness can be so heavy it feels final. It sits on your chest like a stone, making it hard to move, to hope, even to breathe. It colors everything. The memories that once gave you comfort now taste of longing. The ambitions that once pulled you forward seem thin and pale. Even laughter feels brittle, as if it might break at any moment. And somewhere deep within, a voice begins to whisper, "This is the end. You will never find your way back." But that voice is not the truth. That voice is only the echo of fear, of stories learned from a world that worships beginnings and fears endings, that prizes happiness and rejects sorrow, that tells you life is linear, moving from one bright moment to the next, always upward, always forward, never pausing to grieve what is lost. In Buddhist wisdom, there is another story. A story that runs deeper than the surface of your pain, deeper than the temporary shadows in your mind. It is the story of cycles, of seasons, of endless beginnings within every ending. In this wisdom, sadness is not the end. Sadness is the door. Not a door you must slam shut, but one you are invited to walk through, slowly, gently, with your eyes open and your heart awake. Because the heart of the spiritual journey is not to escape pain. It is to transform it, to let it shape you, deepen you, teach you what cannot be learned in sunshine alone. There is a reason every myth, every legend, every sacred text contains moments of darkness, journeys through the underworld, nights spent lost and alone, trials faced without a clear path home. These are not just stories about ancient heroes. They are maps of your own soul. When you enter the corridor of sadness, you are not being punished or cast aside. You are being called inward, downward, into the places where your old self cannot follow, into the wounds that have long needed your attention, into the corners of your being where grief has taken up residence, quietly waiting for you to arrive. And when you arrive, not with weapons or judgments, but with presence, something in you begins to change. The ache in your chest becomes a doorway. The heaviness in your body becomes a ground. You realize that your sadness is not a sign of failure, but a sign of aliveness. Only a living heart can grieve. Only a heart capable of love can mourn what is lost. So what happens when you stop running from sadness? When you turn toward it, breathe with it, let it speak. You begin to see its true nature, not as a wall, but as a bridge, not as a threat, but as a guide. Sadness teaches you what you value, what you long for, what you're willing to fight for. It returns you to your core, stripping away the distractions and delusions that fill the spaces between joy and loss. At first, the lessons of sadness are hard. You learn to sit in silence, to let the tears fall, to hold your own hand when no one else is near. You learn to question the old stories, stories that said you must always be strong, always be cheerful, always be in control. You learn to let go, not in defeat, but in trust, trusting that something in you is wiser than your plans, that the seasons of your soul are no less natural than the turning of the earth. And slowly, almost without noticing, you change. Your sadness softens. Your breath deepens, your gaze widens, able to see both light and shadow, both beauty and pain. You stop asking, "When will this end?" and begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" And the answers come not in thunderclaps, but in whispers, in the comfort of your own company, in the peace that follows a storm, in the strange gratitude you feel for having survived. You realize then that sadness is not emptiness, it is spaciousness. It is the clearing of old leaves to make room for new growth. It is the gentle breaking of the heart that allows more light to enter. It is the teacher who arrives unbidden, asking you to trust, to stay, to open. Sometimes sadness feels endless. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that nothing is endless. Everything changes. The night becomes day, winter becomes spring, grief becomes grace. The same mind that once was filled with pain becomes a mind that can hold peace, if only you allow yourself to stay awake through the dark. And staying awake is the real work. It is easy to numb, to distract, to close the door and pretend the sadness is gone. But numbness is not the same as peace. Distraction is not the same as freedom. When you dare to stay, when you dare to feel, to accept, to honor your sadness as a visitor with gifts to offer, you open the door to a deeper life. A life where every emotion has its place, where every loss carries its lesson, where every ending is the seed of something new. You will still miss what you have lost. You will still ache, still long, still remember, but you will not be trapped. You will not be defined by what hurts. Because in the heart of sadness, you have discovered your own strength, the strength to remain open, to remain gentle, to remain human. And you will notice that, as you soften toward yourself, you soften toward others. Their struggles become your own, their pain no longer something to judge or fix, but something to honor, to witness, to hold. Your sadness becomes a bridge of compassion, a way of meeting the world with less armor and more grace. You find that you can laugh again, not the laughter of forgetting, but the laughter of remembering how precious every moment is. You find that you can hope again, not in a naive way, but in the quiet confidence that every darkness holds the promise of dawn. You find that you can love again, not because you have never been hurt, but because you have allowed your heart to be broken and to heal, wider and deeper than before. And most of all, you find that the life you were so afraid of losing has not disappeared, it has deepened. The colors are richer, the silences more profound, the ordinary moments more sacred. You are no longer chasing happiness, no longer measuring your worth by fleeting feelings. You are living in the center of your own being, awake to the fullness of your experience. This is not the end, this is the door to a deeper life, a life where sadness and joy dance together, where light and shadow belong, where you are not afraid to feel, not afraid to grieve, not afraid to change. So if you are standing at that door today, if sadness is your companion, if the night feels endless, know that you are not alone. Know that the door will open. Know that you are being called not to the end of your story, but to its beginning. A beginning written not in the language of avoidance, but in the language of acceptance. A beginning that honors your whole heart, not just the parts that feel easy. A beginning that trusts, above all, that your sadness is not the end of you. It is the door to everything you are becoming, and you, beloved, are just getting started. Would you like me to continue with Lesson 26, written in the same immersive, poetic, long form? By now you have walked with sadness as a companion rather than a curse. You have sat quietly in rooms others rush through, learning to breathe with your pain instead of running from it. You have watched yourself change, not suddenly, not in great leaps, but in the slow, honest unfolding that only real life offers. Each lesson has led you inward, back to the source of your experience, not to the surface, where feelings come and go like waves, but to the silent depth that endures beneath them all. You know now that sadness is not the sign of your weakness, but a mark of your willingness to feel. It is proof that your heart remains open, even when it trembles. That your eyes have learned to see beauty in places the world tries to hide. That you have grown strong not by avoiding your pain, but by holding it in the quiet chamber of your own presence, letting it become the fire that purifies, the water that cleanses, the soil in which your compassion blooms. You have discovered that your sadness is not an enemy to conquer, nor a flaw to be fixed, nor a detour to be corrected. It is a sacred visitor, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, asking only that you listen, that you stay, that you refuse to abandon yourself when the world asks you to be someone else. It is not a storm to be survived, but a season to be honored. A night that deepens your roots so that when morning comes, you rise with more strength, more tenderness, more peace than before. In the mirror of sadness, you have seen your true face, not the smiling mask for the world, but the soft, luminous presence that remains even when joy fades. You have learned that transformation is not a sudden explosion of light, but the slow dawning of acceptance, the moment you say yes to your whole experience, and in that yes, find the freedom you have been searching for all along. You are not your sadness. You are the one who watches, the sky that holds every kind of weather, the witness to each passing emotion. In your willingness to feel fully, you become a refuge for others. You become the friend who understands, the listener who does not flinch, the quiet strength that reminds others, you are not alone. This too belongs. This too will pass. Life does not need to be fixed. It needs to be felt. You do not need to become perfect nor happy all the time. You need only to remain present, breathing with each moment as it arises. And when sadness comes, greet it as you would an old friend. Let it show you where you are still healing, where you are still human, where you are still becoming. Sit with it until you find the wisdom it carries, the gentleness it awakens, the space it opens within you. When you walk with sadness as your teacher, you become unafraid of your own depths. You see that every shadow contains a gift, every tear waters the seeds of new life. You stop measuring your worth by how good you feel and start honoring yourself for how deeply you are willing to live, for how gently you treat your own heart, for how bravely you remain awake even when the world asks you to go numb. This is your journey, not away from sadness, but through it, not into endless pain, but toward wholeness. Not to a future where you never hurt again, but to a present where you are no longer afraid to feel. Trust this path. Trust your heart. Trust the wisdom of your own sadness, for it is leading you home, not to who you were, but to who you truly are, soft and strong, broken and beautiful, wounded and wise, ever-changing, ever-growing, ever alive. So breathe. Let the sadness stay as long as it needs. And when it is ready to leave, thank it for what it has taught you. Step into the light, not because the darkness is gone, but because you have learned to carry the dawn within you. You are not finished. You are always beginning, and in the depth of your sadness, you have found the truth that will guide you for the rest of your life. You are whole. You are enough, and you are home.